with the two leading candidates for the Democratic nomination, former Vice President Joe Biden and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Candidates, welcome. It's good to have you. I'm Jake Tapper, along with CNN's Dana Bash and Univision's Ilya Calderon.
We come together tonight at an extraordinary time in our country when people are worried about far more than just presidential politics.
That's a big if.
National emergency
Yeah, it's on YouTube and it's on
global
Twitch.
Pandemic of coronavirus.
And it is on YouTube. I guess we are on YouTube.
Yeah.
Notification squad.
3,300 known cases here in the United States. As a result, tonight's debate will focus heavily on the crisis. The setting of this debate is also different. To reduce unnecessary risk of transmission of the virus, CNN, Univision, the Democratic National Committee, and the campaigns moved this debate from Phoenix, Arizona, to here at CNN studios in Washington without any audience.
And all of this comes, of course, as four more states, Florida, Arizona, Ohio, and Illinois, prepare to vote on Tuesday, with Vice President Biden currently leading Senator Sanders in the race for delegates. Here's what we're going to do tonight. Each of you will have 90 seconds to answer questions and 45 seconds for responses and rebuttals. As much as we can, we hope this will be a conversation between the two of you. So let's begin with the most important issue right now, the coronavirus, and what you would do as president in the face of it. Vice President Biden, let me start with you. We're in a reality right now that might have seemed unimaginable a week ago. Schools have been canceled for more than 25 million students. Grocery store shelves have been cleared out. March Madness, NBA games, Disney parks, Broadway, small businesses all shut down. And just today, the CDC issued a new recommendation that for the next 8 weeks, events that consist of 50 people or more throughout the U.S. be canceled or postponed. What do you say to the American people who are confronting this new reality?
First of all, my heart goes out to those who have already lost someone or those who are suffering from the virus. And this is bigger than any one of us. This calls for a national rallying to everybody move together. And, I laid out in detail what I would do if were I president today. You can go to joebiden.com, and I laid it out in significant detail. But there are three pieces of this. First of all, I have to take care of those who, in fact, are exposed or likely to be exposed to the virus. And that means we have to do testing. We have to get the testing kits up and ready. I would have the World Health Organization. I'd take advantage of the test kits they have available to us, even though the president says 1 million or more are coming. Let's just get all the tests we can done as quickly as we can. Secondly, I would make sure that every state in the union had at least 10 places where they had drive-through testing arrangements. I would also, at this point, deal with the need to begin to plan for the need for additional hospital beds. We have that capacity in the Department of Defense, as well as in the
with the FEMA.
And they can set up 100-bed, 500-bed hospitals in tents quickly. We have to lay all that out, but we have to deal with the economic fallout quickly.
More than 10
and that
cities.
means making sure the people who, in fact, lose their
Even
job,
in
don't
Michigan,
get a paycheck, can't pay their mortgage, are able to pay and pay them now. And do it now.
There
Small
may be
businesses
like
will be able to
one in
borrow
Marquette,
interest-free loans.
but
I
there'd
see
have to
my
be like
time is up here.
three in
You're going to hold us
Detroit,
tightly, I assume.
and if
But
there's only
that's
10,
what I
you're
would do.
running
Go to
out.
joebiden.com. It lays out precisely what I would do were I president today.
Like at
Senator
least
Sanders,
10
this morning,
or
Dr.
so.
Anthony Fauci
the really
acknowledged that
large
it's possible
states that don't have that
that
many
hundreds of
people in it,
thousands,
and there's
if
only
not
10
millions
places,
of Americans could die
like
from
Alaska.
coronavirus in a worst-case scenario. If you were
Utah doesn't
president
need 10.
right now,
Do they have 10
what's the
cities
most
even
important
total?
thing you would do tonight
No, a
to
lot of
try
those
to
like
save
mountain
American lives?
Well, first thing
I
we've
don't
got to do,
have that many
whether or
cities.
not I'm president, is to shut this president up right now. Because he is undermining the doctors and the scientists who are trying to help the American people. It is unacceptable for him to be blabbering with unfactual information, which is confusing the general public. Second of all, what we need to do, and I'm glad that he has called a state of national emergency, what we have got to do is move aggressively to make sure that every person in this country finally understands that when they get sick with the coronavirus, that that all payments will be made, that they don't have to worry about coming up with money for testing.
Joe Biden
They don't
just
have
coughed.
to worry about coming up with money for treatment. This is an unprecedented moment in American history. Now, I obviously believe in Medicare for all. I will
know
fight for
Trump
that as president. But
tested
right now, in this
technically
emergency,
negative for
I
corona
want
right
every
now, but
person
like
in
I'd
this
really
country
be
to
lying if I
understand
said
that
that I
when
wasn't
you get
hoping.
sick, you go to the doctor. When you get
Be
sick, if
tested
you have the
negative
virus,
after
that will be
them.
paid for. Do not worry about the costs right now because we're in the middle of a national emergency. Second of all, we have to make sure that our hospitals have the ventilators that they need, have the IC units that they need. Right now, we have a lack of medical personnel, and I worry very much that if there is a peak, whether we have the capability of dealing with the hundreds of thousands of people who may be in hospitals. So we need unprecedented action right now to deal with the unprecedented crisis. And bottom line, from an economic point of view, what we have got to say to the American people, if you lose your job, you will be made whole. You're not going to lose income. If Trump can put, or the Fed can put $1.5 trillion into the banking system, we can protect the wages of every worker in America.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Biden, President Trump says he does not take any responsibility for the problems with coronavirus testing, in part because he says he inherited so many rules, regulations, and red tape. Did bureaucratic red tape hamper this response in any way?
No, look, the World Health Organization offered the testing kits that they have available and to give it to us now. We refused them. We did not want to buy them. We did not want to get them from them. We wanted to make sure we had our own. I think he said something like, we have the best scientists in America, or something to that effect. The idea that we are not prepared for this and the other thing I want to point out, and I agree with Bernie, we're in a situation where we have to now be providing for the hospitals that are going to be needed now. The present system cannot handle the surge that is likely to come. So we should already be sitting down and planning where we're going to put these temporary hospitals. And we can do that. We did that. We've been through this before with the coronavirus. We've been through this before. We've been through this before with dealing with the viruses that the N1H15, as well as what happened in Africa. We provided these hospitals dealing with these great pandemics, and we were able to do it quickly. And people would have a place to go. But we also have to provide the equipment to protect the first responders. And that's not being done either.
Senator Sanders, on that note, and you both of you have addressed this, but obviously another major health concern right now for officials is the potential surge in patients all at once.
Something wrong
overburdening hospitals, the healthcare
system.
You mentioned ICU beds, both of you, and ventilators.
For the love of God.
In the middle of flu season, so already a lot of those beds and ventilators are already being used. If you were president right now, what would you do to make sure every sick American is able to get treatment so the U.S. does not suffer the same fate as Italy,
and I'm trying to be the next
where
ninja.
doctors have to decide right now who gets life-saving treatment and who does not.
Jake,
You want to be ninja?
and understand that this corona
I already can't be ninja because I'm
pandemic
streaming with women.
exposes the incredible weakness and dysfunctionality of our current healthcare system. Now, we're spending twice as much per person on healthcare as the people of any other country. How in God's name does it happen that we end up with 87 million people who are uninsured or underinsured, and there are people who are watching this program tonight who say, I'm not feeling well. Should I go to the doctor? But I can't afford to go to the doctor. What happens if I am sick? It's going to cost thousands of dollars for treatment. Who's going to feed my kids? We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. We're spending so much money, and yet we are not even prepared for this pandemic. How come we don't have enough doctors? How come hospitals in rural areas are shutting down? How come people can't afford to get the prescription drugs they need because we have a bunch of crooks who are running the pharmaceutical industry, ripping us off every single day? And I'll tell you something right now. In the midst of this epidemic, you got people in the pharmaceutical industry are saying, oh, wow, what an opportunity to make a fortune. So the word has got to go out, and I certainly would do this as president. You don't worry, people of America, do not worry about the cost of prescription drugs. Do not worry about the cost of the health care that you're going to get, because we are a nation, a civilized, democratic society. Everybody, rich and poor, middle class, will get the care they need. The drug companies will not rip us off.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Biden, some medical experts are saying the only true way to control this virus is through a national quarantine, requiring every American other than essential personnel to stay home. Would you take that unprecedented step of a national lockdown?
What I would do is what we did in our administration. I would call a meeting in the Situation Room of all the experts in America dealing with this crisis. I would sit them down and I would do exactly what we did then. What is it that we need? Listen to the experts. What do we need? And with all due respect to Medicare for All, you have a single payer system in Italy. It doesn't work there. It has nothing to do with Medicare for all. That would not solve the problem at all. We can take care of that right now by making sure that no one has to pay for treatment, period, because of the crisis. No one has to pay for whatever drugs are needed, period, because of the crisis. No one has to pay for hospitalization because of the crisis, period. That is a national emergency, and that's how it's handled. It is not working in Italy right now, and they have a single-payer system. Now, with regard to what else I would do, the fact is that we're in a position where I would bring together the leading experts in the world. Instead of doing this in the United States, instead of doing this piecemeal, sit down and do what we did before with the Ebola crisis. What is needed? And have one voice, like we did every day we met in that crisis in the Situation Room, laying out, so we lay out overall for all the nation what the best proposal is and how to move forward. In the absence of that, governors are making some sound decisions. They're doing the best they can by going out and getting the healthcare experts in their communities and their states to move.
Hi, Charlie.
But it should be directed from the White House, from the Situation Room, laying out in detail like we did in the Ebola crisis, and we beat it.
Thank you.
How are we doing,
Senator
folks?
Sanders, your response?
Well,
How you
first
doing,
of all,
Charlie?
the dysfunctionality of the current healthcare system
we're fine.
is obviously apparent. As
I mean,
said
I'm
earlier,
just
there are
enjoying
people who
coronavirus
go
and
to the
Busch
doctor,
Light
you're gonna have
and having a
waves
great
of
time.
Regulations.
Do not
well,
drink
this is my
alcohol on
income,
my
that's
stream.
income. Can I get it? Can I not get it? Clearly, we are not
You're
prepared
drinking
to
water,
only
right,
exacerbate
Charlie?
the crisis.
Absolutely.
That's water. Thank
When
you.
we spend
Fun.
twice as much
Yes.
per capita on healthcare as any other nation,
Good, thank
one
you.
might expect
I love that this
we
is
would
a
have enough
four-person
doctors all over
stream
this
dedicated
country.
to watching
One
the
might
debate.
expect that we would have affordable
What were you guys talking
prescription
about, right?
drugs.
Shay's
One
working
might
on
expect
coming
that
too.
we are prepared
Shay.
effectively
Dude,
for
I
a
love Shay.
pandemic, that we were
Yeah.
ready
I
with
also
the
love all of
ventilators,
you,
with the
but
ICUs,
also
with the
Shay.
test kits that we need. We are not. And bottom line here is, in terms of Medicare for all, despite what the vice president is saying, what the experts tell us is that one of the reasons that we are
So how was everybody's
unprepared
day of
and
Corona,
have been
Inc.?
unprepared is we don't have
I've
a
been
system.
isolated
We got
for
thousands
like a
of
week
private
now.
insurance plans. That is
Yeah.
not a system
How's it?
that is prepared
How's it
to
going
provide
for you?
healthcare to all
Do you need
people.
anything?
In a good year, without
Nah,
the
I got
epidemic,
groceries.
we're losing
So.
up to 60,000 people
My
who
mom
die every
sent
year
me
because
this
they don't get to
picture
a doctor
today.
on time.
I love
Yeah.
And
Munchie.
clearly, this crisis is only making a bad situation worse.
That has nothing to do when you're in a national crisis.
Zooming with
The national
good friends
crisis
right now,
says
so.
we're responding. It's all
You talking
free.
about us, or you got
You
another
don't
Zoom
have to
channel
pay
working
for a
right
thing.
Got
now?
another Zoom
That has
channel
nothing to
up.
do with whether or not you have an insurance policy. This is a
I would be
crisis.
so
We're
hurt
at
if you
war
had a
with the
second
virus.
Zoom
We're
channel
at war
up.
with the virus. It has
I
nothing
already
to
have
do with
2
copays
computers
or
up
anything.
to
We
do
just
this.
passed a law saying that you do not have to pay for any
Are
of
you
this,
watching the?
period.
That's not
Period.
true. As a matter of
Do you
fact,
have the
that's not
debate
true.
on
That
right
law has
now?
enormous
I do,
loopholes.
yes.
Are you
I
not?
understand that Nancy
You
Pelosi
not?
did her
I'm
best,
in my
the
room,
Republicans
but I'm gonna
protected it.
grab a
But
beer
what you're
towards the
talking-
living room.
What you're talking
have
about
it
here
on
is
screen on
enormous
my laptop.
loopholes within that in fact it is not
I
necessarily
have
covering
Some-
treatment for all people
iPad.
in
I'm watching
America,
it on my
and that
iPad
people are going to be
and
stuck with a
texting
bill
on my phone.
unless we
This
change
is the
that.
most
We're going to
first
offer
world
legislation to
it
in
gets
fact
over
change it.
If I
here.
may, I offered
Some
legislation.
people-
I laid out on my plan.
Some people
that it would
stream,
cover
others
exactly what is not covered by the House.
fumble
I
through
laid
it.
out in the plan
We're
that
here
I
for
laid
it.
out for how we would deal with this crisis.
Fumbling through it, like
Nobody
Biden
will pay
comparing
for
Ebola to
anything
the
having to do
coronavirus.
with the
Which
crisis.
is classic
This is a
Biden. It's
national
clearly
emergency.
more like the
There isn't a
Spanish
question
flu.
of whether or
Am I
not
right,
this
ladies?
is something that can be covered by insurance or anything else. We, out of the
Oh, it's a
Treasury,
lady.
are going to pay
And by
for
ladies,
this.
I mean
National emergency.
Nicole, who
See,
actually
that's
knows
what my
something
plan
about
calls
disease
for.
But
ecology.
the weakness of
Yeah.
this is let's
I
just do
wouldn't say I know something.
hypothetical.
I know little.
Family
I would say
members
you know more
diagnosed
than
with
anybody
the
else.
virus.
Is it the
Terrible
Sarajevo
tragedy,
virus,
massive
though?
anxiety.
And
Hey,
Wife
Brett,
has
actually
the
wasn't
virus.
get
Her
Brett on
husband
there.
is a wreck.
Brett, am I
Wants to go to a
Brett.
psychologist. Wants to get counseling.
Are you sure?
Doesn't have
I can grab
the money to do
headphones.
that. Maybe
Great.
their kid
You
breaks
grab
away.
headphones if
They
you're-
don't have the money to go to help. You're saying right
Get
now
in
in
on
the
this,
middle of a
Brett.
crisis. But you know what? Last year, at least
Hi.
30,000 people
No one
died
informed
in
me
America
that this was going on.
because
It's
they
on
don't
the
have
Check the
health
freaking
insurance
Facebook group,
Facebook.
Brett.
because we don't have
It's on
universal
Facebook.
coverage. I
If
think
anybody
that's a crisis.
happens
1 out
to
of 5
be
people in
watching
America
that's
cannot
not
afford the prescription drugs
in our
they need.
circles,
They
is
suffer.
Jess
Some
and
die.
Nicole,
I consider
Charlie,
that a
and
crisis.
Brett in the
Bottom line
background of
is,
Charlie's
we
stream.
need a simple system
Do you have any
They're all very
viewers right
smart
now?
people, and I'm
exists
also
in
here.
countries all over the world.
What's
And
that?
that
what
is,
just happened?
if you are an American, you get the health care you need. End of discussion. We can
Brett,
save
get your
huge
computer and
sums of
stream
money
in with
doing that.
us.
The trick is, do we have the guts to take on the healthcare
He can't hear
industry,
us.
some of which is
I can
funding
hear you.
the vice
I had you.
president's
he
campaign?
was
Do we
ignoring
have the
me
courage to
purposely.
take on the
You said my
executives
computer's
at the
right here.
prescription
Why would
drug
I stream in
industry,
also?
some of which,
Oh yeah,
some of
I
whom
thought
are
we were
funding
social
this campaign?
distancing. I'm sorry.
This is a national crisis.
They'd be
I don't want
6
to get
feet,
this into a
less
back
than
and
6
forth
feet
in
apart.
terms of our politics here.
Right, I'm trying to be
I've
helpful
laid out
here.
a plan, building on Obamacare, providing a public option of Medicare.
Wait,
would cover
Nicole, how did you
everyone
live stream the
the
debate?
same way. This idea that this
I
is
went to the
his only
CNN
answer
CNN.
is a mistaken notion. But
Hang
regardless
on,
of
I'll
whether
get
my
there.
plan
Stream it
was in
for free on
place or
CNN's main
his,
page.
this is a crisis.
Or you
This
can
is
follow
like
on
we are being
twitch.tv/Kick
attacked
of Doom.
from abroad. This is something
Click
that
all
has
the
a great
links that he
consequence.
sent
This
out.
is like a war.
I refuse
And in a war,
to
you
watch
do
it via
whatever
Kick
is
of
needed
Doom.
to be done to take care of your people. And
I'm
my
not
That's what
conclusion,
everybody
and I
does. They
proposed it
refuse to
and
watch
laid it
it.
out in detail. Everything that you need in terms of dealing with this crisis would be free.
I'll get there.
It is paid for by the taxpayers generally.
Nothing's happening right now. They're
It
just
has
arguing
nothing to
because
do
Biden
with
is
Bernie's
stupid.
Medicare
Yeah.
for all. And by
Bernie's
the way,
basically saying Medicare for all.
Vice
Joe
President
Biden's
Biden, thank you.
basically saying
If I
Medicare for
may,
all as
the
long
Vice
as the
President just
emergency's
mentioned
going
war.
on, but then after
Would
that,
you
no
deploy
thanks.
the U.S. military
Which
in
is
efforts to contain the
Joe Biden.
virus? And if so, how?
well, I think
After
we
that
use
died.
all
What
of
the
the
fuck is the
tools
military gonna
that
do?
make sense. And
According
using
to
the
Venus.
National Guard, which is
I
focused,
think
I
the
think, in New York
idea
State,
is
New Jersey,
martial
New
law
Jersey,
enforcing
something that has
social
to be done.
distancing.
This is clearly.
I have it on
Can you
screen.
imagine
Major
police
national
coming to break up the line at the Riv on
And what
Thursday
I
mornings?
worry about
That
is
would be
not only
fantastic.
how we respond aggressively,
Or
I
break
feel like
East
certain
Lansing
groups
kids
would
out of
be
bars.
targeted more
Like
than
the
others.
military
also
just comes
how
through and
we
stops us from
respond
drinking.
aggressively to the economic fallout of a global recession. So right now in Illinois and Ohio, if my memory is correct, the governor there has said they're closing down bars, they're closing down restaurants. What happens to the workers who are there? What happens to the millions of workers who may end up losing their jobs? So what I think we have got to do right now is if Trump can provide,
Yes.
the Fed can provide $1.5 trillion
Do you deliver?
Fred's making pizza.
for liquidity for the
We're so
like
isolated
You're gonna
together,
see it
which
every
is
worker
cute.
in America.
Hey
I-
guys, would you like to
Don't
hear what I
panic.
had for dinner
You're
today?
You'll be able to pay your
Pardon?
mortgage.
Senator,
because you're
I'd
gonna
like to
get a
know what I
check.
ate
You're
for
gonna be
dinner
made
today.
we're going to
whole.
talk
What
about
did you
the
eat for
economic-
dinner today?
Go ahead, Mr. Vice
I
President.
am out of
Answer is I would
yogurt,
call out
so
the
I put my
military.
granola in
Now,
sea salt caramel
they have
ice
the
cream.
capacity
You
to
did.
provide the surge help that hospitals need and that is
We are
needed across
healthy.
the nation. I
Picture
would
of
make
health.
sure that they did exactly what they're prepared to do.
You and your
They've
towel
done it.
really
They
are the
did it in
picture of health,
Ebola
Nicole.
crisis. They've done
Dyed
it.
my hair.
They have the capacity to
purple.
build 500-bed hospitals and are in
He
tents
did
that
not
are
react to
completely
that. My
safe
hair
and
is
Your
secure
hair is purple?
and provide the help to get it
Wait,
done.
what?
To anybody
You
that's
dye your
overflow.
hair.
So it
Yes,
is a
I
national
dyed my hair. It is
emergency.
purple.
I would
Wait,
call
I
out
did
the
not see that. I'm
The
sorry.
Ebola crisis is one thing.
The
This
towel.
is obviously a pandemic, which is far more
Apparently.
severe
Look,
What the
impact
fuck?
to this country.
This used to
And
be
I think
just a
one of the
green
things
shirt
that we want to remember here
Wait,
is that
why
we
did
got a
you
lot
dye
of
your hair
elderly
purple?
people in this country who
because
are
I'm
told,
unemployed
"Stay
and I
home.
can.
Don't leave your house."
Are you having a
Who's
crisis?
going to get food to them?
No, I was
How do
always
you
Joe
going
Biden
to.
just
You got
compared this to
schools all over this
Ebola.
country now being shut down.
Yeah, Joe Biden keeps comparing
How are we
it to
gonna make sure
Ebola,
that the
even
kids
though there were like
do
5
well
cases
in
of
this
Ebola in
crisis, not
America,
become
and it's only
traumatized?
bloodborne. It's
What do we do
not.
about the parents now who have to stay
you
home
know.
with the kids and can't go?
Yeah, there's
Go
no
back
difference.
clean up here.
What's
I
his
think
name?
Ebola only killed
bottom
black
line
people.
here
We don't
is
care
that
about
in
that
this
one.
crisis, we have got to start paying attention to the most vulnerable. That includes people who are in
Yeah,
prison.
the
For
World
my
Health
future
Organization
presidential
didn't
campaign,
declare
that
a
was a
state of
joke.
emergency
What
until
about the
in
That
half
was
a
a
million
joke.
people who are homeless tonight? Who's going to respond to them?
Yeah, you are.
Now, in 2008,
That 0 people are watching.
when we
I'm
had
just
the
trying to
Wall
make
Street
sure.
bailout, they did very well for the people
hang on.
on top. They bailed out.
No, the
the
World
crooks
Health
on Wall Street.
Organization
They
doesn't
forgot
declare
about
states of
the suffering
emergencies
of
until they
ordinary
affect
Americans.
white
This
countries
time around, let
specifically.
us learn that lesson. Let us pay attention
White
to
power
working
Thank you,
families in this
Senator.
country.
Yeah.
We have the most
We
vulnerable.
have learned that lesson. And again, I lay out in detail. What we should be doing now is we should be surging help to those
I'm so
places
glad that we're
which are
doing
the
this
most
and not
vulnerable.
just
We should
doing
have
this alone.
every single person that's in a nursing home.
I mean,
being
Brett and I
able to
would
test
do
it.
this together
We should be
anyways,
moving
but
forces in to do that. We should move in the capability into that. We should be sitting
It's
down.
Shay,
the
guys.
president's
Say
been
hi.
sitting down in this
Shay.
situation now
Hi,
more
Shay.
than
We're
before and
FaceTiming
asking the
Shay
question,
into
okay,
the Zoom.
you're going to close everything. If you
I
close
am
everything,
not
how do
using
you get
headphones, though,
prescriptions
so
that
You
have to
can't
be
hear
filled.
them.
How do you
Hey,
make
Brett.
sure when you close that school, those children are going to be able to get
Oh,
the school
hello.
food program? How do you make sure that you're going to be
I
able to
don't-
see
I
to
don't
it
know
that you
how-
get your mortgage paid? I propose
Can you
that
use
all
your,
of that be covered, and it's going to take a
Can you
multi-billion
not
dollar
just phone
program
in?
to do that. But first things first. The first thing is take care of the immediate needs we have now relating to surging the kind of capability we have.
I really wanted to pray, so I'm glad she's here.
How it's going to cause such
pain,
as well as moving in the direction of making sure we have long-term plans.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We're going to talk in a moment a lot more about the economic impact. But first, Senator Sanders, I want to ask about China. When this outbreak first started in China, the government there censored the whistleblower doctor who sounded the alarm and downplayed the true gravity of the virus.
Right.
What consequences should China face for its role in this global crisis?
Well, one of the consequences is we have got to learn that you cannot lie.
Shay's always fucking shit up.
You cannot be less than frank about the nature of the crisis. And what bothers me very much is you have a president of the United States today, Mr. Trump,
RIP to us,
who was praising China
it wasn't a huge
for the
party,
good
it
work
was just
that they
kind of a
are
smaller,
doing, when in fact, as you
smaller
indicated,
hang,
they were lying to their own
but we
people
still
and allowing that virus to move much more
might have fucked
aggressively
ourselves.
than should have been the case. Look, I don't think this is the time for reformation, to be punishing
14
people.
days.
Now is the time, by the way, to be working with China. They
I'm not concerned. I for sure already had the coronavirus.
And in fact,
one of my
we
roommates
have
is
got
just
to
like
work with them. We got
dead
to work
set
with the
that we
World Health
already have it. And
Organization.
honestly,
We got to work with
maybe.
Italy. We got to work
No,
with
I'm
countries
convinced
around
I
the world.
already had it
If
and
there
got
was
over it.
ever a moment when the entire world is in this together, got to support each other, this is that moment.
Have you guys not shut down the bill yet?
That's
Have you
why I
reduced hours?
insisted the moment this broke out that we should insist on having our experts in China to see what was happening and make it clear to China there'd be consequences if we did not have that access. And we have to lead the world. We should be the ones doing what we did during the Ebola crisis, bringing the whole world
Shay,
together.
it's like nothing
Saying,
changed.
this is what we must do. We have to have a common plan. All nations are affected the same way by this virus, depending on exposure.
Did you not just suggest invading China?
Leadership. We need international leadership. We need someone who knows how to bring the world together and
purposely
insist
export
on
the disease to us?
fundamental change in the way in which
they
we're approaching
definitely lied about it, but
I mean, how many times has the United States lied about?
The bottom line here is that in the midst
But the
of
fact
this
that
this would be
crisis,
okay, you know?
we have got to act in an unprecedented way.
Wasn't
And that means
Jesus, what?
every country on earth is going to be affected. Every
That's all I
country
have to
on
share.
earth has got to work together. It also means that we tell the pharmaceutical industry, we tell the big money interests that this is not a time for profiteering. This is a time for all of us working together. The World Health Organization is a very, very strong organization. It is sad that we have a president that has ignored the international community.
Shay, why
in
can't
so
you
many
just
ways,
zoom in?
including in terms of international health crises.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Obviously, another part of the story is
MSU
the economy, which is reeling from this pandemic. Many economists
Your
are
MSU
warning
email still
of a
works, right?
recession. Just hours ago, the Federal Reserve cut
Did you
interest rates to
log in
near
with-
0%, which has not happened since the financial crisis in 2008. Vice President Biden, what would you do?
What I would do is make it clear to the world and make it clear to the United
I've never
States
used handshake
that we are going to
successfully.
have a major bailout package that we do not reward corporations, we reward individuals.
Nicole, you
who, in
love
fact, are
Handshake.
really
It's great for
put to
finding
the test.
jobs, right?
The problem is the
absolutely, 'cause
policies
I'm
of this
unemployed right now,
administration
Charlie.
we've eaten a lot
Look,
of our
all of my
seed corn.
jobs.
The ability for us to use levers that were available before
Now that
have
soccer's
been used up by
canceled,
this god-awful
Will you
package
turn
of
up your
$1.9
light
trillion
back
dollars
to your purple
by
hair?
the fact that we have used the Fed will be of little consequence
Well,
Yeah.
now. They've already,
A tattoo
they've
that I
already
could not
used what
afford.
leverage they
Twitter
have.
had spoken.
And so we're going to have to just level with the American people. And here's the
I
deal.
dyed my hair purple.
We're going to have to not only deal with the immediate crisis, economic crisis, which is the most critical
my
now,
story,
to
didn't
let people know their mortgages are going to be paid, their rents are going to be paid,
Oh, no,
they're
it's
going to
full.
have
I'll
child
have to
care,
resend
they're going to
it.
make
It's
sure
been more
that
than 24 hours.
all their medical bills are cared for relating to this, etc. We have to go beyond that. And we're going to have to be in a situation where we're meeting on a daily basis, like we did in the middle of the financial crisis,
If I
decide
stick in
how
time,
we
though,
are
I
going
can't
to find
donate
the
blood.
wherewithal and the money to be able to see to it we hold all these folks harmless.
Yeah, I'm
Not
gonna be doing
not
a
do
accredited
what Trump
tattoo
wants
parlor.
to do. For example, he came along and said, I got a
can't
great idea.
donate
Let's
blood because I had an antibiotic
Senator
last
Sanders.
month.
The
Also,
Ebola
you're
crisis, in my view, exposes the dysfunctionality of our healthcare system and how poorly prepared we are despite how much money that we spend.
All right, let me send it.
And the Ebola crisis is also, I think, exposing the cruelty and the unjustness
Yes,
of our economy.
every time I use my inhaler, people like
We
look
have
at me.
more income and
It's
wealth
like, I'm sorry, I need these steroids to breathe.
And what that means that in the midst of this crisis, you know, if you're a multimillionaire, no one's happy about this crisis. You're going to get through it. You're going to get everything you need. You're not worried about health care. You're not worried about income coming in. Half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. We got people who are struggling, working 2 or 3 jobs to put food on the table. What is going to happen to them? So the lesson to be learned is we have got to move aggressively right now to address the economic crisis as a result of Ebola, as a result, keep talking about Ebola, I got Ebola in my head here right now, as a result of the virus
You
here.
can like sort of see the purple glow.
What we have got to do also is understand the fragility of the economy and how unjust and unfair it is that so few have so much and so many have so little.
People are looking
It's
for
also
results,
kind of
not a
crappy lighting.
revolution.
Will you text that
They want to deal
screenshot
with
to
the
me as
results
a
they need
non-Snapchat
right now.
user?
And we can do that by making sure that we
Bro,
make
add me on
everybody whole
Snapchat.
who has been so badly
Alex, I
hurt.
have you on
In terms
Snapchat.
of their,
You do?
they lose the job,
Yes.
in terms of not
You wanna
having
be
the
on the
ability to
420
care for their
snap?
children, in terms of the healthcare costs that they have related to this crisis. We can
Do you
make
have
them
2
whole
Snapchats?
now.
What? No,
now,
I
and put in process a system whereby they
didn't
all
used
are
to use
made
it,
whole.
but now I do.
That has nothing to do with the legitimate concern about income equality in America. That's real. That's real. But that does not affect the need for us to act swiftly and very thoroughly and in concert with all the forces that we need to bring to bear to deal with
Social
the crisis
isolation.
now.
Social
so no one's thrown
isolation.
out of their homes.
More
Sis,
like
No
a
one loses
normal
their mortgage.
Saturday.
No one is kicked out of their house.
Is
No
it
one
Freudian?
loses their paycheck. No one is in a position where they have a significant
Alex Laffler, I
financial
don't have you
disability
anymore.
as a
You'll have to
consequence
add
of this
Add me at
of
Kick
this
of Doom.
particular crisis.
Thank you, Vice President.
Why do
Senator
I have to
Sanders.
find you? This is
Alex,
I
why are
think
you clicking Doom?
it goes without
What?
saying
That's a good question.
that as a nation,
Why the
we
fuck
have
didn't
to
you send it to
respond
Brett?
as forcefully
What?
as we
I
can
am with Brett.
to the current crisis.
Nicole,
But
why
it
didn't you
is
send it to Brett?
not good enough, not
You
really
told me to.
understanding
Shameless, it
how
was an
we
ass.
got here.
It was
Huh?
on
We
my
all want
screen
it.
for 24
into the
hours.
future.
Oh, it was?
So how
Oh,
does it
okay.
happen
I admit,
that
I've
today,
kind
in the
of been
wealthiest
out of the
country in
loop
the
for a
history of the
while.
world,
I think
half of
Snapchat
our
just
people are
has
scared
been
to
getting
death?
depressing. But
Good.
moving forward.
I agree. In fact, that was my idea
There it is
originally, to
with
make sure
Brett.
that every person in this country is
There you
made
go.
whole as a result of this crisis. But God willing, this crisis
It's not
is
super
going
purple
to
because
end.
I'm not going to bleach my
And we
hair.
are
I'm
going to
not that
have to
committed.
develop
Oh, okay.
an economy in which half of our people are not living paycheck
only
to
so much
paycheck
purple will
and
show
struggling
up.
to put food on the
Did
table.
you diet at a
I
certain
don't
time of
disagree
day
with
so that you
that.
could take
You
a
were asking
picture?
about the crisis. What
The,
are we
like,
going
No,
to
actually,
do
I
in
did it
crisis
after
now,
work
which
on
is
Thursday.
incredibly consequential to millions and
That looks
millions
good.
of
I can't.
Americans.
I'm
It's
sorry,
not
I
going to be
can't hear you because
solved
of the
by a
headphones.
change in tax policy now. It's not going to be
Are
solved
we on a
by a
three-way call
change
right
in
now?
how we
That is
deal with
uncomfortable.
He
healthcare.
tried to,
It's
but I
got to be
certainly
solved
can't
as an
do that with
emergency
the,
need
the
right
salt on
now.
my ears of
Right
4 different
now,
things
what
going
do
on.
we do? First thing we do is we make sure that
Nah,
healthcare is
Because of my
available
setup,
for
I
us.
hear
We have the
everything that
tools to
I
be able
say
to deal
through
with
the
it,
headphones
and that
too.
requires us to go out and do much more than this president has done in terms of planning. Secondly, it requires us to be in a position where we're anticipating what will happen in the next month or weeks in terms of the
Are you
flow
watching the
into the
debate, though?
healthcare system by bringing the military along, more hospital beds, more training,
Oh,
more
Zoom doesn't have
equipment,
the debate.
more
You need to pull
equipment
up
to
on
save the first
CNN.
responders as well. In addition to that, we then have to also look at what are the immediate needs right today. How about that person who's been laid off today? How about that person who doesn't have an income today?
This
They
is a
have to
mess.
know that tomorrow, when the paycheck comes due,
Are you talking
will
about the
get
debate
that
or this?
paycheck. And thirdly,
No,
we have to
this is
think
called
long-term
package.
about how we deal with making
I'm like
all
hearing my
those who
voice
are
in
badly
stereo
damaged
because it's
All
not
of us are
speaking
hearing
up
your
for her.
voice.
then
Yeah,
we
all of
move
us
on.
can hear it.
Then we move on to change the economy in ways that are more profoundly necessary than people think, but do not respond to the immediate needs we have now.
Hi, Matt.
First things first.
Thank you, Vice President. Senator Sanders, you voted against bailouts following the 2008 financial crisis.
Yes.
Many believe those spending bills were a critical part of stabilizing the economy back then. Would you support bailouts for industries that are being crushed by the coronavirus outbreak now?
I did. You're quite right. I voted against the bailout because I believed that the illegal behavior being done by the people on Wall Street should not be rewarded by a bailout. And today, by the way, those banks are more prosperous and own more assets, by and large, than they did back then. They're bigger now than they were then. I thought at the time that in the midst of massive income and wealth inequality, the people on top who a surtax on the very wealthy should bail out. And it's not just the TARP bailout.
Excuse me.
We gave trillions of dollars in zero interest loans to large banks. But to answer your question where we are right now, we need to stabilize the economy. But we can't repeat what we did in 2008. Joe voted for that. I voted against it. Because we have got to do more than save the banks or the oil companies. Our job right now is to tell every working person in this country, no matter what your income is, you are not going to suffer as a result of this crisis of which you had no control.
Vice President Biden.
Had those banks all gone under, all those people Bernie says he cares about would be in deep trouble. Deep, deep trouble. All those little folks. We'd have gone out of business. They'd find themselves in a position where they would lose everything that they had in that bank, whether it was $10 or $300 or a savings account. This was about saving an economy, and it did save the economy. And the banks paid back, and they paid back with interest. I agree with Bernie. Some of them should have gone to jail. That was the big disagreement I had
The
in terms
webpage
of
keeps
bailing out.
crashing.
But the question was,
The
they
CNN?
paid back. In addition to that,
Wasn't for
it
me.
also part of that was
Yeah, I'm good
bailing
here,
out
dude.
the automobile industry, saving
Well, maybe
thousands
it's
of
just a
jobs,
stupid iPad.
tens of thousands of jobs over time.
My
We voted
iPad does
against
just
that as
close
well.
out a lot.
I did not vote against that. That bailout money was used later on by Bush
Heard that Apple
to protect the automobile industry. But here's the
know
point.
Apple's
One
listening.
minute. Here's the point here.
for sure.
Is that in terms of that bailout,
They're always
there are
listening,
ways that
even
you
when you're on
can
mute.
bail out. When you have a handful of people who have incredible wealth, who
The
have
signal,
profited
Nicole?
off of the illegal behavior of individuals, in this case on Wall Street, you know what you say to them? And I did. I said this to the Secretary of Treasury. You want to bail out? That's fine. You have your friends pay for it, not working people. The other point is, as Joe should know, it wasn't just the $700 billion TARP program. The Fed gave trillions and trillions of dollars in zero interest loans
What, Nicole?
to every financial
What?
institution in this country
No.
and central banks.
Nicole
all
thinks she's
over the
cool
world.
'cause
That
she's
was
been to
essentially
Ferguson.
a grant
Oh my.
because they
Grew
then
up
could
in
sell that.
Ferguson,
They could
Charlie.
then bring in interest rates much greater than the zero interest loans that they got.
Vice President Biden.
Look,
I was close.
None of us are
the
going to
fact of
get
the matter
elected
is
ever.
that if in fact the banks had all
Margot's
been
iPhone.
gone under, we would be in a Great Depression.
Wait, did you not
We would
invite
have
Margot to this?
How do you get out of that? Now, Bernie said,
Yeah.
I guess he's going to do a wealth tax or something,
I
that
did.
the top 1% can
It's
pay for
Andrew
everything,
and Shay.
and they should
Stay
pay
in
for
the
everything
Hello.
that occurred.
No,
We were
it's
Hi,
talking
Andrew and
about
Shay.
tens and
Hi,
hundreds of
Andrew.
billions of dollars.
They are.
That's what this was about. And the fact
Is this
was that
bullshit
it
working?
saved the
Can they hear us?
economy from going
Yeah, we
into
can hear you.
depression. After
I
we
just had to
passed
authorize like
the
9
Recovery
things for
Act,
the
which
app.
I was the one who went out and got the 3 votes to
Annoying.
get it changed,
Yeah, we're just
that
trying to
had
debate it.
Or where's the debate?
$900
fun of
in it,
our
It's on
and was,
CNN.
was the thing that kept us from going
Oh, so
into
you're
the
not
Great
like streaming
Depression.
it?
You're on the
Vice President
website.
Biden, I'm going to stay with you. Many of the 11 million undocumented
Here, we could just do our,
immigrants and now
best
even many
impressions.
legal immigrants in the United
to be here.
States are afraid to seek medical help. How do you ensure they feel safe enough to get treatment
Pull it up
to
on
help
Shay's
stop
phone and
the
hold them
spread
side by
of
side.
coronavirus?
Yeah.
Anyone who
Okay.
shows up to be tested for coronavirus or gets coronavirus and is treated would be held harmless. Just like I've argued all along, any woman who crosses
Yeah,
the
plug
border or is here and being beaten by her husband, but she's an undocumented, she cannot be deported because she reports. There are certain things you can't.
Wait, Alex, did you invite Margot to this?
Undocumented alien
I
for,
put it in the
undocumented
scholar's
person
Facebook.
for. And that would be
Margot's
one of them.
always
We want
invited.
that. It's in the interest of everyone.
Will you put it in the
Those
scholars
folks who
group
are the
chat and
xenophobic
invite
folks
Margot
out there,
specifically?
it's even in their interest
I
that
did
that woman
not.
come forward or that man come forward, because it deals with keeping the spread from
I don't
moving
know
more
if I
rapidly.
Bro.
They
can with
will
the
not,
computer
should
set
not,
up.
under any circumstances, be held
I think it's
accountable and
rude
could
to
be
exclude
deported, be
that.
deported for that purpose. Period.
I have been criticized because the proposal for Medicare for All that I introduced includes making sure that undocumented people are also
Do
covered.
not point that at me.
And right now, we have the absurd situation where undocumented people who try to do the right thing,
Your
they're sick, they
camera's
want to
out,
go to the
Andrew.
doctor, they don't want to spread this disease, are now standing and thinking about whether ICE is going to deport them. So one of the things that we have to do is to make sure that everybody feels comfortable getting the health care that they need. That should be a general principle above and beyond the coronavirus. Second of all, we've got to end these terrible ICE raids, which are terrorizing communities all over this country. And thirdly, to answer your question, the time is long overdue for this country to move to comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship for those 11 million undocumented. And furthermore, on day one as president, I would restore the legal status of the 1.8 million
Senator, thank you. We're going
young
to talk
people
about immigration in a minute, but first I want to ask about something that's going on right now. Again, back to this crisis. We know that people over the age of 60 and those with underlying medical conditions, especially heart disease, lung disease, and diabetes, are the most vulnerable to coronavirus and are being asked to change their behavior to protect themselves. So Senator Sanders, I'll start with you. You're 78 years old. You had a heart attack. What are you doing to protect yourself?
Well, a great deal. Last night we had a fireside chat, not a rally. I love doing rallies, and we bring many thousands of people out to our rallies. We enjoy it very much. We're not doing that right now. In fact, our entire staff is working from home. So on a personal level, what we're doing is I'm not shaking hands. Joe and I did not shake hands. And I am very careful about...
I'm so glad they're both now starting to wash their hands.
I'm using a lot of soap and
Fun fact
hand
for
sanitizers
the male
to
population
make sure
is
that
I was on
I do not
vacation
get
with
infected.
a certain
And
male
I
for
have to
spring
say,
break,
thank God
and
right now
he was
I do
talking
not have
to
any
us and said,
symptoms,
you
and
know,
I feel
it's
very
something that's going to really
grateful
gross
for
you
that.
out.
Vice President
Most
Biden,
guys
you're
don't wash their
77.
hands
What
after
are
they
you doing to
pee.
protect
And I was
yourself?
like, coronavirus,
I
this
don't have
was
any of the
caused
underlying conditions
because
you talked
of
about
you males.
that I have to worry about. Number one.
Yo, that's not-
Number two, thank God.
Not
for the
all
time
men
being,
don't
anything could
wash
happen.
their hands
We're
after
going to say knock on
Not
wood.
all men
Hashtag not
have
all men.
coronavirus.
Number three,
No, I think they
I'm
all do.
taking all the
This is
precautions
how we
anyone
wipe
would
out.
take, whether
I
they're
wash
50
my
years old or
hands.
60 years old.
The
or
underlying
And I had
whatever.
coronavirus.
And that is, I want to make sure that I do
That you talked about.
not shake hands any longer.
Is that
I
it?
do not
No,
engage.
knock on wood,
We
Joe.
did the same thing. Our staff is all working from home. We are not doing rallies any longer. We're doing virtual rallies. We're doing virtual town hall meetings. We're in a situation where now I do not, as I said, when we encounter
Nicole, do you
people,
have
we're not going into
coronavirus?
crowds. And
No,
so I'm
Charlie,
taking
I
all
have
the
asthma.
precautions everyone
heard
else
you cough.
should be taking. I
I'm
wash
worried.
my hands
I have
multiple
asthma,
not
times
common.
a day with hot water and soap.
Are you sure?
I carry with me, as a
Are
matter
you
of fact,
poor?
I have in my bag outside here, a hand sanitizer. I don't know how many times a day I use that. I make sure I don't touch my face, and so on. So I'm taking all the precautions
I hope
we're
you're
told
lotioning
everybody
up,
else to
man.
take.
Let's turn to the race more
Hand
broadly
Hand
now.
sanitizer,
Throughout this
Joe.
campaign, you've each laid out starkly different visions
Contributing
for
to
how to bring
creation
about
of
change.
superbugs.
Vice President Biden, Senator Sanders is calling for a political revolution. You said people want results, not a revolution. Make the case for why a revolution is not what the country needs or wants.
We have problems we have to solve now. Now, what's a revolution going to do?
Oh my God.
Disrupt everything in the meantime? Look, Bernie talks about, excuse me, the senator talks about his Medicare for all. He still hasn't told you how he's going to ever get it passed. He hasn't told you how, in fact, there's any possibility of that happening. He hadn't told you how much it's going to cost. He hadn't tell you how it's going to apply. It doesn't kick in for 4 years, even after it passes. We want a revolution. Let's act now. Pass the Biden health care plan, which takes Obamacare, restores all the cuts made to it, subsidizes further, provides for lower drug prices, makes sure that there's no hidden bills, make sure that we invest, what I want to invest $50 billion in dealing with underlying diseases that are of great consequence, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and cancer. Make sure that we have a Medicare option that's in a public option providing Medicare for us. We can do that now. I can get that passed. I can get that done if I'm President of the United States of America. That will be a fundamental change, and it happens now. I can tell you from experience, being a significant consumer of health care, with my sons, my family, all the things we've gone through. What people want is hope, and they need it now, not 4 years from now. And Bernie still hasn't told us how he's going to pay for it. We're talking about a $30+ trillion plan.
Not quite true.
Senator
All
Sanders.
right, look, Let's do
Okay,
something that is
but
very
no one
rarely
was
done
talking
in
about
Congress.
how are we going to bail out
Let's
Wall
do something
Street.
that
We
the
just
media
came
doesn't
up
do.
and
Let's talk
pulled
about the reality of American
$150
life.
trillion
We
out of
pulled
everyone's.
Why is it that
1.5
over the
trillion
last
out of
45
thin
years, despite
air.
the huge increase
Nicole.
in productivity
Oh, but how are we going to be able to
and
pay
technology, the average worker today
Medicare,
is not
a
making a nickel
standard
more
human
than
right
we
in
will.
most every
Why
other
is it that
civilized
over the last
country?
30 years, the richest 1% have seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth?
Also, that's such a
Bottom
talking
half of
point.
America,
Pull that out right
$500
now,
billion
Bernie. Pull
decline
that
in their
out.
wealth. Why is it that we are the only major country on earth
He
not to
said it
guarantee
earlier.
healthcare to all people as a human right? Why are we the only major country not to have paid medical and family leave?
Oh, they're
Why do we
turning
give
to
tax
each other
breaks to
now.
billionaires when 500,000 people are homeless
that.
today?
Oh.
And it comes down to something, Jake, we don't talk about. The power
I just want them to
structure
fist fight
in
at this
America.
point.
Who has the power?
I think it'd be
And
more
I'll tell you who has
interesting.
the power.
We can't
It's the people who
pass some blood
contribute
to
money,
it
the
and touches
billionaires
too much
who
stuff.
contribute money
Could be
to
carried.
political
Bernie can't risk it.
campaigns, who control the legislative agenda. Those people have the power. And if you want to make real changes in this country, if you want to create an economy that works for all, not just a few, if you want to guarantee quality health care to all, not make $100 billion in profit for the healthcare industry, you know what you need? You need to take on Wall Street. You need to take on the drug companies and the insurance companies and the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, but
you don't
watch
take campaign
those.
contributions from them. You take them on and create an economy that works for all.
You want to do that? Do what I proposed over 30 years ago. Federally fund all elections. No private contributions in the election process. If you want to do that, join me. Join me in my constitutional amendment that I've been proposing. Maybe you and I can work on that together, because that would fundamentally change it. And the implication is I've not accepted a contribution from anybody over $2,800, number one. My average contribution is $44. Just this month, I've raised $33 million. Average contribution, $51. The idea that this is Bernie's implication is somehow I'm being funded by millionaires. Bernie, look, in the last Super Tuesday and before that, Bernie outspent me 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1. And I still won.
Sorry about that.
I didn't have any money.
I know you all missed riveting comment.
Sanders?
It's good that you had an idea 30 years ago. I don't want to join you. Why don't you join me? Why don't you get rid of the super PAC that you have right now, which is running very ugly
I'm
negative ads
broke.
about me, by the way.
And I still
Don't laugh,
won.
Joe. That's just the
I'm
truth.
poor.
And they got 2 other super PACs running ads against us. Why don't you just say right now, go on television and say, hey, you know what? I think in the past, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, you condemned super PACs. Is that correct?
You get rid of the 9 super PACs you have?
I don't have 9 super. I don't have
You
any
have
super
9.
PACs.
You want me to list them?
No, yeah, you go ahead and list
Okay,
them.
come on. Give me a break.
No, I won't give you a break on this one, Joe. You condemned super PACs. You got a super PAC is running negative. But here's the point. This is the point. In the richest country in the history of the world, half of our people should not be struggling to put food on the table.
Throwing
And the
hands.
reason for that is you have a political structure in which big money interests not only dominate the political system, but dominate our economy as well. Somebody makes a decision, we're going to shut down a factory in America, we're going to move to China, we're going to move to Mexico, pay people starvation wages there. This is an issue that has got to be ultimately dealt with. Who has the power in America? Are we content with so few exercising so much power when so many people have given up on the political process?
I proposed a significant change in the tax code, and I've been proposing it for a long, long time, number one. Number two, it's not just about taxing the super wealthy. It's about making sure everybody pays their fair share. For example, I can pay for my whole healthcare plan by changing the way in which we deal with capital gains. People should pay their capital gains based on what their income tax is, and not at 20%. That would raise $800 billion, pay for my entire medical health care plan, which would cover everyone. The fact of the matter is, everything I call for, I pay for. And I do not believe, and I have not supported these
Biden has a
exorbitant tax
healthcare
cuts
plan?
for the wealthy. I strongly
Really?
opposed the
He has
the
Obama's
tax cut that
healthcare
this
plan.
president has put through.
Yeah, he has Obama's healthcare plan with a public
$1,900 billion.
option,
And I
which
said
was
at the
Obama's
time, this is
healthcare.
all about trying to eliminate the safety net. Look, the idea that Bernie
So
implies
we're
when
8
he
years
says
behind,
things,
but it's
speaking
okay.
of negative ads, My
What
Lord,
their
Bernie,
website?
you're running ads saying I'm opposed to Social Security. That PolitiFact says is a
I can't
flat
believe you just
lie,
accused
and
Bernie
that
of
the
having
Washington
super
Post
PACs.
said
I'm
is a
still on
flat
that.
lie.
Oh, well, let me ask you a question, Joe.
Yeah.
You're right here with me.
Yeah.
Have you
show
been
us
on
the
the
receipts.
I
floor
wanna
of the
see
Senate?
them.
You were in the Senate for a few years.
Yeah.
Bernie's just one
Time
big
and
super
time
PAC.
again talking about the necessity, with pride, about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting veterans programs.
No.
You never said that.
No.
All right. America, go to the website right now. Go to the YouTube right now. Time after time, you were not a fan of Bo Simpson.
I was not a fan of both.
You were not a fan of the
These
balanced
two
budget
crusty old
amendment,
white
which
guys
called
fighting
for
at each
cuts in
other
Social
is
Security.
so
Come on, Joe,
obnoxious.
you won't.
Look, here's the
Also,
deal.
like,
Honest guy, why don't you
Going
just tell
back
the
to
truth
the
here? We all make
history,
mistakes.
like,
I am
oh,
telling the
you
truth.
said this once
You
upon a time,
said
oh, you
that
said
I,
this
in
one.
fact,
Like, just,
why am I
you
rated
can't fight them on their
96% by
record
the
at this
Social
point.
Security
They're both so
Organization?
freaking
Why am I
old.
viewed as a strong
All that I said.
Try
I have
something
laid
new.
out how I will
Remember in
increase Social Security.
'65
I
when
laid that out.
I have laid out how I'm going to make
Okay,
sure
back when Bernie
that
was
it is, in
governor of
fact,
some
paid for.
little
Jake,
town in
Go to
Vermont?
JoeBiden.com.
mayor.
Look at my exchange with Paul Ryan on his desire to try to privatize and/or cut Social Security.
Okay.
And Jim Crow
understand how he
Biden was the
manipulated it.
governor of Delaware.
Joe, let me
But also,
repeat it
like,
again. I
what
want
their
you
past positions
just
are
to
matters to some
be
extent,
straight
but
with
like
the American people.
not as
I'm
much as what their
saying
position
that
is now.
you have been
Because even
on
if
the floor
like,
of the Senate
yeah, I
time
didn't vote
and
for,
time
or I
again
voted for Social
talking
Security
about
cuts
the
once upon a
need
time. Like,
to
it doesn't
cut
matter if he's
Social
not going to do
Security,
it now.
Medicare, and veterans.
Yeah, Reagan was
Is
the
that
president.
true or is that
No,
not
it's
true?
not
Like,
true. What
That is
fuck does
not
it
true?
matter?
That is not true. What is
I
true
think
is,
I feel
in
for
terms
some
of the
point,
negotiations
you
that are
have to
taking place,
consider it.
how to deal with the deficit,
I feel like it
everything
matters
was on
for
the
a certain
table. I did
point
not
as
support
it
any of
reflects
those
in your
cuts
current policy
in Social
positions.
Security
Like
or in veterans.
when
Whoa,
busing was like an
whoa.
issue for Joe Biden,
Everything was
seeing
on
that
the
his
table.
policy
All right,
has
you're
not
right. You just
changed,
said it.
like even
Including,
like
in
from
your
segregation
judgment,
to now, it's
cuts
still
to
the same
Social
policy
Security and
position.
veterans.
In
But yes,
order to
on
get
busing,
the
I feel like
kinds
that's
of
when it
changes
matters.
we need on other
Okay.
things
I don't
related.
know. I can't
Joe,
see
but
either
again,
one of
but
them
we did
cutting
not
Social
cut it.
Security.
I know,
did not
because
vote for
people
it.
like me helped stop that. But Joe, you
come
just
on, Bernie.
contradict Joe. You just contradicted
Okay, but
yourself.
it,
1 minute, excuse me. 1 minute you said I was not on the
there are
floor.
just so
The
many
next minute you
different
say,
ways
well,
that I
yes,
think
there
Bernie
was a
should have
reason
approached
why
this
I was
debate,
worried
but I
about the deficit.
don't think he's
Maybe
taking
that's
any of
good
them.
reason, maybe it's not. All that I
You
am
should have
saying
texted him.
is you were prepared to
He
cut
is not
and
going to
advocated
win.
for the cuts.
He
for
needed to
programs.
have used this
I
to
did
start
not.
getting
I
Joe
never
to like
voted to
start
cut
adopting
Not
some of
talking
his
about voting, Joe.
ideas and
That's not
start
what I
reining
said.
some
Voted-
Bernie voters in,
Look,
rather
I
than
voted to
literally
protect it.
fighting him.
I was the just go look at the debate with Paul Ryan for the vice
Right, but it's more
presidency.
fun to just
Look
fight
at
him.
what I did. And Bernie, will you acknowledge your campaign took out a context?
And if you
Nothing
fight
that
them
whole
long enough,
exchange
then the
between
Trump
Paul
voters
Ryan.
will
Are you
just
saying PolitiFact
climb
is
on
wrong?
over
You're
like
saying
Yeah,
fucking
well,
lemmings.
Washington Post PolitiFact is wrong a whole lot of times.
No,
But
are they wrong on that, Bernie?
Okay.
Are they wrong on that, Bernie?
Joe,
Bernie,
Joe,
did you miss?
Joe, did you? Wait a minute. I'll answer your question. You answer mine.
I answered yours.
No, you didn't.
When was
One
the last
more
time the
time.
moderator said
Were
anything?
you on the floor time and time again, for whatever reason, talking about
They've really
the need
been
to
going.
cut Social Security and Medicare and veterans programs?
No, I did not talk about the need to cut any of those programs.
Okay, all that I would say to the American
Jesus
people,
Christ.
YouTube, it's all over
I
the place.
wish Tulsi
Joe
Gabbard
said
was
it
here.
many, many times. And I'm
24
surprised,
years
you know,
ago.
you can defend
Don't we
it
all wish
or
Tulsi
change your
Gabbard
mind
was
on it,
here?
but you can't deny
I
the
just feel like
reality.
it would be a
Senator,
little more
because you
entertaining
brought
for
up
them.
Social Security
Yeah.
and you've
Be a
been
breath
talking
of fresh air.
about it, I want to ask you about something that you wrote in 1996. You were a member of the House, and you wrote an op-ed that said, quote, "It is clear we will have to make incremental adjustments in Social Security taxes and benefits."
Yeah.
Why are your past comments any less relevant than
Incremental
things that the Vice
adjustments. What
President-
I advocated, adjustments that I advocated and have advocated for years, is among other things increasing the cost of living assistance. No, you're not going to find me ever calling for cuts to Social Security. Right now, for example, we determine COLAs by looking at inflation for the general population rather than segregating the higher costs that seniors are paying for prescription drugs and for
What if all
healthcare.
these infant
That's what
bucks
I
get
was
corona?
talking about. I have, in
Is that
fact,
the worst thing?
when Joe and
Start
others
over.
were enamored with the so-called
why
Biden
Hillary
agenda,
Clinton
which
me
included
and Joe
cuts
were basically
Social
like, if
Security or raising the
coronavirus took
retirement age,
out like
I
everybody over
formed,
the age of like
along
50,
with people like Barbara
who would be
Boxer,
president,
the
and
Defending
it's like
Social
the
Security
12th
caucus
person
to
in
say
the line
no.
of succession.
When 20% of our seniors are trying to get
Apparently,
by on
kids in middle school
$13,000
have
a
been
year or
calling
more,
this
we are not going to cut
the boomer
Social
killer.
Security.
Vice President Biden.
I heard that.
Yesterday,
I'm kind of here for it.
An Elizabeth Warren
Honestly,
plan
I'm
that
still
would
saying if
undo
someone
key
were to
parts
just kind
the
of
bankruptcy law
walk around a
helped
few of the
pass
departments around
2005.
here
A
coughing
few hours ago, you
excessively, I
announced
mean,
support
I'm here
for
for it.
making
You know?
public college tuition
You're
free
looking for a
for
history
families
job.
Doom
who
does
make
not
less than
endorse
Yeah,
ageist
$125,000
looking for
a
a
year,
job over there.
something Senator Sanders has supported. What changed?
Two things. Number
Pick
one,
of
let's talk
doom
about the bankruptcy.
advocating for the boomer
Bankruptcy
doomer.
bill was passed
No,
overwhelmingly,
no.
and I improved it. I had a choice. It was going to pass to the Republican
Okay,
president,
where did
Republican
Kick of Doom
Congress,
come from?
And I offered 2 amendments to make sure that people under $50,000 would not be affected, and women and children would go to the front of the line on alimony
That's
and
all I
support
get?
payments. That's
It's
what
a
I
running
did. It
gag on
passed
Twitter that
overwhelmingly.
people like.
I did not like the rest of the bill. But
It's
I
a shortened
improved it,
version
number
of
one.
High Flying
Number two,
Kick of Doom.
I've talked with Senator
but
Warren
High
about
Flying
her
Kick of Doom
proposal.
normally
This is
doesn't
the first
fit
opportunity
in
we've had to make substantial change
different
in
websites
what we
like
couldn't get
limitations
done
for
in a
usernames.
Republican
So it gets
administration.
shortened down to Kick
That's
of
why
Doom.
we talked last
Gotcha.
2 nights ago, and I supported her proposal. And it's a good proposal. It's a solid proposal. And she should get credit for having introduced it. With regard to what we're talking about in terms of college education, I've been saying for a long time that we're in a position where 12 years of education is not enough for the 21st century. We need 16 years of education. The exact bill that Senator Sanders introduced, I guess a little over a year ago, capping it off at $125,000 in income. You could get free up to that point. After that, you'd have to pay for your college education. It only worked for public schools, and it would work for public universities in your state. I support that idea. It was a good idea, and I support it. And so that's what it is. And I'm not saying everything Bernie said has been wrong.
I did
He
not.
happened to be right on that one.
Senator Sanders, I assume you welcome these changes.
Look, this is a little bit about leadership as well. Joe talked about bankruptcy. Joe, if my memory is correct, you helped write that bankruptcy bill.
I did not.
All right?
I
And that
did not.
bankruptcy bill, by the way, when we talk about education, we got 45 million people in America struggling with student debt. Some of them really struggling with student debt. And that bankruptcy bill made it impossible, very difficult for people to escape from that student debt. It was a very, very bad bill. You said, Joe, that a majority of the people in the Senate voted for it. You're right.
Overwhelming majority.
Overwhelmingly. Well, I voted against it in the House, and I was right. And I don't have to rethink my position because that's what leadership is about, having the guts to take an unpopular vote. But it's not just bankruptcy. The difference between Joe and I on higher education is 4 years ago. It was not a popular idea, Joe. I'm glad you're coming around now. 4 years ago when I said that public colleges and universities should be tuition free, people were saying,
Do we know
Bernie,
anything
that's
about
a radical
Sanders,
idea.
like
Well,
foreign
you got
policy
states and cities and
stuff?
counties
I
all
haven't
over the
heard
country
anything.
that are moving in that
He's an
Maybe I'm just
direction.
out of the loop.
And I'm glad that Joe is
Not
on
an
board.
important
What leadership is about
right?
is going forward when it's not popular, when it's an idea that you get criticized for. So I'm proud of that fact, and I'm proud of my leadership on many
Entirely
issues.
domestic.
Joe, since the campaign has come around, I talked about raising that minimum wage
I'm not 100%
$15
sure
an hour
about
4
Joe
years
Biden
ago, Joe.
for
So
a
did
policy
I, and I went out and
position either.
$15 an hour?
$15 an hour in New
But
York
at least,
City.
like,
Go
with
talk to the
Biden,
governor.
you know, if you don't know about it, it's probably just
I'm not
Obama's.
aware
You
of
should
that.
be aware. Look,
All right, 4 years ago,
True.
it was a radical idea.
Sanders
Very
is pretty
few people in
staunchly
Congress
anti-imperialist
Go ahead, Vice
in a lot of ways.
well, here,
That
look.
change.
Let's get something straight about the bankruptcy bill.
Main thing
The
Sanders has
bankruptcy
said,
bill
foreign
already,
policy.
it did not affect student debt for 90% because the law had already been
His
passed.
main foreign policy thing is
You could
ending
not
the endless
declare
wars. Which,
bankruptcy for those loans.
I don't know. You
that
can
were
assume
from
Biden is for
private
that just
institutions.
based on his
You couldn't
past.
do it. And so the bankruptcy bill
You
didn't
could
affect
say,
that. It affected 10% of the people, the first bankruptcy bill.
Well, especially
10%
with
of the
the
student
Obama
loans, number
administration,
one.
but-
Number two, now
I don't
we're in
know.
a
That's the
position
main.
where
He
we're
has
able
been.
to correct
Sanders
that
has been
problem.
pretty
The
staunchly
fact is,
against
if I hadn't stepped up
long-running wars
and
we're in.
changed the law as it relates to
voted
people
against
making less than
Iraq and
$50,000,
Afghanistan.
those who for alimony and child support, then guess what? They would have been in the bucket too. It was going to pass anyway. I made it. Let me finish. I made it incrementally
voted
better.
for it.
I did not like the bill. I did not support the bill, and I made it clear to the industry I didn't like the bill. Number two, this bill now calls for the opportunity to fundamentally change the mistakes we couldn't correct in the bill the first time around. And that is why I support Elizabeth Warren's idea. and it's a very good idea.
Senator Sanders, go ahead.
Well, this is kind of circular logic. We're going to reform the bill that I voted for. Well, if you hadn't voted for it, and if you had rallied other people, as I try to do in the House voting against it, we might not have the problems with it we have today. You know what leadership is about, Joe, and it deals with, you know, whether, you know, your
but also,
opposition
like, that's really
or your
faulty
support, I
logic
should say,
and assuming that Biden, his vote was going to change it. If it was an overwhelming enough margin that he couldn't have done anything about it.
The so-called Defense of Marriage Act. You remember that?
Like,
right?
at some point, you just have a party line vote, just to have a party line vote.
Today is
to take an
considered
L
a
on
little bit
one thing,
differently
so
than
you
it
could
was
take a W
25
on
years
another.
I remember that vote.
I'm not saying that is what happened, but I'm saying that that's
against
kind
the
of
Defense of Marriage Act. You voted
weird
for it.
thing.
I voted against the bankruptcy
See, Nicole,
bill.
you're
You voted
assuming
for it.
that the
I voted
logic in
against
these
the war
debates is
in Iraq,
ever
which was also
reasonable.
a tough vote. You voted for it.
They're just pulling shit out of their asses.
Trade agreements
Wishful thinking.
like NAFTA and PNTR with China,
I'm with you.
which
I
cost this country over 4
fully
million
wish
good-paying
that they
jobs. You voted
had more
for it.
basis for
I
their
voted
arguments,
against the
but
Hyde Amendment, which denies low-income
it's
women
all you voted
the
for
right to
this,
get
you
an
voted
abortion.
for that, you
have
voted against
consistently
that.
voted for it. I don't know what your position is on it today,
When
but you
really
consistently voted for it. In other
truly
words, all
what
that
this
I'm saying,
debate should, this
we
is
can
going to
argue
probably
about
be
the
the
merits
last
of the bill.
debate of
Vice President Biden.
It takes
primaries.
courage sometimes.
It should
to
have
do the right
been
thing.
We can argue about the past.
Biden
the future.
throwing some,
This man
or
voted
Bernie throwing
against
some
the
softballs
Brady
to
bill
Biden
5 times.
and accepting
Background checks.
that he needs to get his
Background
camp
checks
behind
5
Biden, or
times.
we're going to have another
Number
freeze
one.
of Trump.
Number two, this man is the only one of the few
Yeah, but Bernie's
Democrats
not willing
I
to
know
do that,
who
which is
voted
what he
to
said all
exempt
along.
the gun
He's going to
industry
literally fucking
from being
die
able
on
to
the
be sued.
campaign trail.
Talk about a special interest. We can sue. We should be able to sue drug companies. We should be able to sue tobacco companies. We cannot sue the gun manufacturers because he voted for that years ago. He says it was a mistake now. I'm prepared to accept he says it's a mistake.
Well,
the question is, what do we do
I 100%
from this
agree with that,
point
Brett.
on?
I
And
feel
by
like
the way, I might add,
Trump's going to win
I'm
against
the
Biden.
first
There's no
person
way
to go
Biden
on
makes it.
national television in
No
any
way.
administration
I would like
and
to be
say
proven
I
wrong, but I
supported
don't think I will
gay
be.
Both of
marriage.
them.
I supported gay marriage when
Biden.
I
asked.
think that
And I so
Biden
and it started a
could
ripple
be
effect. I'm not taking all credit
catapulted
for it, but I'm
into
the
the
first
presidency
major
if
player
the
to say
virus
I
response
support gay
continues to tank
marriage
the
on
economy.
national television.
And that is
All
the
that I'm
only
saying
way
here
I think Biden could win. He
leadership.
absolutely
We can
does not
argue,
have the
you know, this
head-to-head
bill.
prowess to take
But
down
what
Trump.
I'm suggesting is
Yeah.
that in this
Maybe
Maybe
time
if we had,
of crisis,
maybe if we had some
when
type
we're
of
living in a
mass
really,
voting
really
drive to get people to
unsettling
vote
world,
without leaving, because
economically,
if it's less
from a
turnout,
healthcare perspective
Trump's
with the
people will die
coronavirus.
to vote for him.
The people of
You know, they
America
don't
believe
know
it's
my
gonna
vote.
hit them.
Okay.
They think
For
it's a
30 years,
hoax.
I have stood with the working
He's
families
also-
of this country.
They
I don't
better
know.
start
Biden
licking
is
doorknobs.
like,
Every special
as far as
interest
like the
there is
progressive
out
camp
there,
goes, which is
and
a
that is what I
substantial
will do
portion of
in
the
the
left
White House. That's a
voting
very
base at
different
this
record than
point,
Joe.
Biden
That
is
is
like
not a
one of
different record than mine.
That
like
is
if you're a
totally
progressive,
different record
Biden
than
is
yours.
possibly
All right?
like
I mean, and it's a
one of the
manifested in his
most disappointing
campaign when
candidates
you're,
out of
you
the
know,
entire
getting all
field.
this money from,
And at least so far,
you
he
know,
hasn't
wealthy
really shown
people
that much
and
willingness to
billionaires.
adopt
So,
any more progressive
I
stances.
think
Like he's
if-
going to have a
if
very
you
hard
want
time
somebody
bringing in that wing.
who will take
My
to the
only
White House
thing is,
what
I
I've
don't
done
understand
for my
when
whole
he
life.
has that
Thank you,
Hillary
Senator
Clinton
Sanders.
did it.
And that is take on
Besides,
special
like,
interest. I
the
think on
private
that
part.
campaign.
Thank you,
That's
Senator
it.
Sanders.
I don't
Usually
feel like-
$44.
Dementia, maybe.
Let's talk about the future, Vice President Biden. If you become the Democratic presidential nominee, how will
I
you
just feel like she
appeal to
lost,
supporters of
and
Senator
I feel like
Sanders
he's
when
gonna
you
lose.
do
Like,
disagree on
I
so
don't
many
think it's
issues?
changed.
You're making it hard for me right now. I was trying to give him credit for some things. He won't even take the
The only
credit
thing
for
that
things
might
he
be a
wants to do.
factor is that since
Look,
Biden has been polling
I
so
think
well
that-
with the
I
African
wanna make it
American
clear.
population,
If Bernie's a nominee,
Hillary didn't really
I
get
will
that
not only
one. So
support
that's
him,
the
I
only
will
thing that I could think
She
of
did in
that.
the primaries.
and
Yes,
I
she
believe
did.
the people who support me will
She
do
did
the same
really
thing.
well in the
Because
with
the
the African
existential
American
threat
vote
to the United
because a
States
lot
of
of people
America
associate her with Bill
is
Clinton, which was
Donald
the
Trump.
best time
It's
African
critical.
Americans have had
I
in
would
this
hope
country.
that
Period.
Bernie would do the same thing if
So
I'm
she
nominated
like-
got
and
the
encourage
right
all of
vote.
his
There was
She
no
didn't-
doubt
followers
about
to, in
it.
fact,
She
People
didn't
support
voting in the
sustain it.
primaries,
because it's
like
much
people
did.
voting
bigger
in the
than
primaries
either of
aren't
us.
who Hillary Clinton's problem
Character
was,
of the
because her
nation
issue was
on the
she
ballot.
could not
It goes
replicate
well
any of
beyond
the
whether or
level of
not
turnout
Senator
Obama had.
Sanders and I both agree
And-
we need
And
medical
also, a
health
whole
care
bunch
should
of
be a
white
right,
women
not
voted
a
for
privilege.
Trump.
We both agree
Yeah.
we have to
We're the
deal with
worst.
student debt. We both agree we have to
Y'all
deal
really
with
are.
education education,
But
and access
suburban
to
white
education.
women
We both agree that we
have started taking
to deal
Democratic
with the existential threat that faces
population,
humanity.
though, and Biden
We
doesn't
disagree
appeal to
on the
anybody that's
detail of how we do it,
disenfranchised.
but we don't disagree on the principle. We
I think that he'll get the
fundamentally
African American
disagree
vote
with this president
fine, and
on everything.
like no
This is a
African
man who
Americans are
wants
going
to
to vote for
cut
Trump.
Social
That's not the
Security, cut
question here.
Medicare,
My
not,
only
not
concern
Bernie,
is
the
who
president
is
of
he
the United
bringing
States.
new, who has
So
never
this
voted
is much
before, who
bigger
will
than
vote
whether or
now
not
because
I'm the
Joe
nominee
Biden
or
is the
Bernie's the
candidate.
nominee.
Nobody.
We must defeat Donald Trump. He is the exit.
Nobody.
4 more years of Donald Trump
So
will
we're
fundamentally change the nature of who we are as a nation.
We've been
got to
screwed
restore
since the
this country's
beginning.
Soul.
Yeah.
That's
The whole thing's
essential.
been a
And
shit
as long
show.
as this president is there, we're not.
We
gonna
had
win.
what?
Senator Sanders,
25
can
people
I
running
just say
for
one,
president when there are
Well, it's
so
just a
many
quick
other
question.
things they could have been
If
doing
he
with their
is the
lives.
nominee,
Like
Vice President Biden,
governorship.
I know you already said
represents
you would
one
support him.
thing
But will you
demography
campaign
of,
for him? Will
of
you urge your
Democrats that they
supporters
On day one,
might be able to
when I
bring
announced
out.
my candidacy, what I said
I
is
just
this
felt like
country cannot
there were so many people.
deal
There's
with
other things that we need besides the
a
president,
president
and so
who
many
is a
people who are
pathological
running
liar,
could have
who's
been
running a corrupt
running for
administration,
Senate,
who
running
obviously
for
doesn't
governor,
know
running
the
for something else,
Constitution of the United
and you
States,
took
that
up
believes
all
he's
this
above the
time
law,
and space
was a
to
racist
get
and a
here where we
sexist
knew
and a
we were going to
homophobe.
end up with
He is the most dangerous
progressive
president in the
versus
modern history of this country. And what I said on day one,
Biden.
Joe, day
So
one.
where we thought we
And
would.
obviously, I hope to win the nomination.
Yeah, you got
But if I don't
progressive versus
win the
corporate,
nomination,
both
and I
crusty
think
old
every
and
other
white.
Democratic
Done.
candidate is prepared
Yeah, but
to
like
come together
one thing that made me
to do
really mad, like
everything
Beto, for
humanly possible
example,
to
he
defeat
could have won
Donald
the
Trump.
Senate seat.
But let me respond to
Like,
something
and
that
you chose
Joe
to run for president
said.
instead of
We
running for
talked about the
Senate.
Green New Deal.
Why did you
And
do
all
that?
of these things
It's not
in
sexy
general
enough.
terms, but details
Nobody needs
make
John
a
Cornyn
difference.
Senate seat.
A
What I have
mess.
said throughout this campaign,
The
and I don't
stupidest
think
thing
I
he could have
produced
done.
it,
Now he's
Joe,
unemployed. Now
is
what?
that if we are going to if we're
He'll
going
Now
go
you
to
work
turn
change this
purple.
planet
and actually make
for our
money for the
kids
next couple of
and
years.
future generations, we need to have the courage
And I liked
to
Beto
take
before he
on
ran
the
for
greed
president.
of the fossil fuel industry and make it
He
clear
didn't
to
suck
them
when he was
that
that
running
their
against Ted
short-term
Cruz.
profits are not more important than the
I mean,
future
but
of this planet.
Ted
We
Cruz
have a
is
very
a very
detailed plan,
popular
a
senator.
detailed
I just felt
proposal.
like when
Happy
the
to get
other
the
guys
endorsement
came up,
of the
you
Sunrise
definitely can beat
movement,
him.
the
You
American
almost
people.
beat Ted
We're going to get
Cruz.
into the
John
Green New
Cornyn's the
Deal. We're gonna
majority
talk
whip.
about climate
He's the
change.
second
We have
most
to squeeze
powerful
in a
senator in
quick
the United
break.
States.
When we come back,
Not that
CNN
he's
News'
popular,
Democratic presidential
but-
debate
That
will
doesn't-
return.
but
Stay with us.
When it comes to as far as like vote in his state,
Texans love John Cornyn though.
We
well,
made
he couldn't
USAA
try.
insurance for
And
veterans
even
like
Pete,
Kate.
I thought he
When
could
she
have
got
ran
a
for
new car
governor
for
of
bigger
Indiana
projects,
fine.
she quickly
Why
updated her
did you waste
policy
your
on the
time running for
USAA
president?
app and said, done.
Pete really
You
should.
really thought we were going to
USAA,
elect a
what you're
mayor
made
from
of,
South
we're
Bend,
made
Indiana?
for.
Pete is 100% lobbying for a cabinet position, and I think that's all he's been doing the whole time. And I think
That's
he's
what
probably
he's
going
been
to get
doing
one.
since he was 2 years old.
I mean, if Biden were to, as I said, somehow be catapulted into the presidency, I do think like Buttigieg would immediately be in the cabinet or some other high up position. So,
Curious
and I think
state.
Beto had the same idea. Beto, however you say it.
I think they're going to forget Beto for sure. I think Pete might have a chance at a cabinet position, but if Biden becomes president, he's not going to remember.
Well, Biden's not going to remember a lot of things. That's besides.
Okay, just while we're on commercial break from the first part of the debate, what are your thoughts, Jasmine?
I think that the coronavirus conversation was good. I wish people would have focused more on what do we do about the health crisis we currently have, like past coronavirus, like people die all the time. I wish certain people would have been pressed more to say what they were going to do about those people. That's my thought. Also, the arguing was kind of annoying.
Okay. Charlie, and if Brett's there, what are your thoughts?
Nicole goes first because I have a feeling I'm going to repeat and probably take your point from earlier.
Is Nicole here? Nicole, you there? Andrew, you there? Shay, you there?
I'll be back. I'm going to go get ice cream.
Okay. We'll see you soon.
All right. So Brett and I are here. My interpretation was there was too much fighting over things that are not going to matter to the American people, especially those like the past votes, and just like constant nitpicking does not bode well for any sort of democratic unity.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'll say this as a guy who is not always the most in the loop on things. It's hard to, that really, I feel, only appeals to someone who very carefully watches all these political things, which I'll just be honest, I don't think a lot of people in the U.S. always have time for. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie and Brett. Nicole, what are your thoughts in the first section? I don't think she can hear. Hi, Nicole. Are you here with us?
I am.
What are your thoughts on the first part?
My thoughts on the first part was that this is wildly ineffective, and both of them could have been using this time to do something else that they're not.
Told you she should have gone first.
Exactly. Well, she was getting food. Andrew, Shay, are you with us?
I was getting cookies.
Ooh, sounds good. Andrew,
we're here.
Andrew, Shay, what were your thoughts on the first section?
Do not point that at me. I just think
Bro, he just hung up. Wait, no, we're here. We're here. Hold up. God, what the hell is this? All right, yeah, we're here.
What are your thoughts?
They wasted a lot of time going, Joe, Bernie, Joe, Bernie, Joe, Bernie, and feeling each other. But I thought that was pretty entertaining. So.
I mean, I'd like to specifically comment on all the talks around past votes. And I think it's particularly important, one, because Trump is absolutely going to weaponize Biden's god-awful record. Like, in the campaign leading up to the general, that's exactly how he, beat Hillary so bad. I mean, from the electoral standpoint, I guess, but that's how he depressed Hillary's turnout. That's how he will depress Biden's. Biden has done very little to actually convince me that he's going to depart from that record. He has fossil fuel executives in his potential cabinet. He has, he's taking very moderate standpoints, which moderate is kind of right-leaning when both parties have been moving to the right for the past 30 years, but that's aside the point. I don't know. I think Bernie's kind of like a dead man walking at this point. And I think he cares too much about, well, maybe not too much, but he cares very much about beating Trump, and he's kind of taking, but he's also still committed to his values. So he's not promoting, he's not really trying to win over the progressive wing for Biden right now, but he's also not he's not really taking it to Joe Biden the way that we're going to see Trump and other people do in the lead into the general. So I would say overall, not really super. I haven't had my mind changed about anything by what I've seen today. I'm still not confident in Biden. I don't think Bernie's completed whatever Hail Mary he was trying tonight. That's Shay.
I already said my piece. Most of you not look at me.
All right, you can pass it.
Okay, thank you all. At least helps keep up the facade of this being a show. So thanks. Appreciate it.
I love that we're treating this as a show, Alex.
Yeah, well, we're streaming, we got to get the views.
How many people are watching other than the people?
I'm sure nobody's watching.
That's really unfortunate.
Oh, because we're epic.
Oh, find out how many people are watching.
I'd really like to know, actually. Brett's watching on his own laptop. Over there, you might notice.
0 views on Twitch. And 0 viewers on YouTube, but 1 dislike. Hey.
1 dislike?
1 dislike.
Are you Kick of Doom on YouTube?
Yeah. That's hilarious. No, it's nice to take this in with perspectives from people that know what they're talking about. It's kind of my main goal of doing this, but I also like to stream on Sunday nights, so it's a marriage. So thanks for coming out tonight.
I'm so glad that I'm out tonight with you.
Hey, all the social distancing keeps you out of the bars and stuff. Apparently doesn't keep Nicole out, though.
I only went to a bar to eat on Saturday.
Are you telling me that you only went to a bar to be around people and then consume food that people cooked?
Alex, tacos were $1.50.
Oh.
You went to Taco Rama. You went to Taco Rama at the Rib.
No, we went at 5. There were 6 people there.
I'm sorry, Nicole, but my stance stays the same.
You're saying you rolled up to the Riv just to get tacos?
Pinky promise, that is. I did not drink a drop of alcohol there.
Okay.
There's the debate.
we went.
Women are the canaries in the coal
We were either
mine
going to
of
do
the
Leo's
conservative
Coney
agenda.
if there was a line
Our
in the
access
ribs,
to
but there
health
wasn't a
care
line.
is at
So we
risk
just
from the
went straight in,
Federalist
got
Society's
some
remaking of
tacos,
the
ate
courts.
them, went to bed.
Our lives are threatened
I'm
by
proud.
abusive partners'
miss
access
anything?
to guns.
Oh,
Women
and
are
we
Judge
just saw
finished my
disproportionately
tacos.
affected by bail requirements, Social
want a
Security
taco.
cuts,
Nicole
and
went to
cuts to
Rama
public
yesterday to get
education.
tacos.
How
That
will your
deserves
cabinet
judgment.
ensure the best
Yeah.
advice on
Where's
issues that
Mama?
affect women's
At the
physical
rib.
and
But
financial
the
health?
hair looks cool.
Thank you.
So.
True, it does.
My
Also, I
cabinet,
was not
my
lined up at the rib.
administration
I was never
will
in a
look
crowd
like
of people.
America. Last I
We
heard,
went to the bar.
over half
Okay.
of the people
She
in
touched
America
my
are
credit
women,
card. That
and that
was
will
it.
be the representation
And then
of
I
my
got a
cabinet
basket of
and my
tacos.
administration. And
Consumed
in
them.
terms
You
of
said that was
policies,
like it
unlike,
was romantic.
Joe, I have
Charlie,
consistently believed
she touched
and
my
have a
credit
100%
card.
lifetime
I'm not sure what the
voting
kids
record
are
for
saying
groups
these
like
days,
NARAL,
but
that it is a woman's right
as long
to
as y'all
control
both
her own
consented,
body,
it's fine.
not the government. I have believed that we have got to move aggressively to deal with domestic
Hey,
violence
turn
in
the
this
debate
country.
sound back on.
I have
On that note.
aggressively and I think
Come
effectively
on.
made the case that we cannot have women in America earning 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. And if you're a minority woman, it's 50 or 60 cents on the dollar. We need to have universal, affordable, high-quality child care so women who are single or married can go off to work and know that their kids are going to be well taken care of. So I think if you look at my agenda, which is on berniesanders.com, what you will find, it is a very strong agenda in fighting for the rights of women who today are under incredible political assault by Trump and Republican governors all across this country.
Vice President
Can I
Biden,
respond to that?
please.
Yes, thank you. Number one, I agree with the question, the underlying premise of Amy's question. Number one, I committed that if I'm elected president, have an opportunity to
Bernie discovered
appoint someone to
progressive
the
women.
courts, I'll appoint the first black woman
Found
to the
'em.
courts. It's required that they have representation now. It's long overdue. Secondly, if I'm elected president, my cabinet, my administration will look like the country.
Bernie
And I
Ocasio-Cortez
commit that I will, in fact, appoint
ticket.
I'll pick a woman to be vice president. There are a number of
Think
women
she
who
can
are
do more
qualified
if
to be
she's still in the
president
House?
tomorrow. I would pick
Absolutely.
a woman to be my vice
It's
president.
also been like
Number
super
three,
disconnected from
I'm
the
the guy
Sanders
that wrote the
campaign.
domestic violence law, and
I
I'm the
bet
guy that put in
Biden will
the
pick,
prohibitions that no one who abuses
It-
someone else should be able to
What's your
own a
name?
gun. Period.
Kamala.
They should not be able to own
Nah,
a
it's
gun.
gonna be
I would get the
Klobuchar.
boyfriend exception
It's gonna be
Oh,
Kamala.
God.
amended. Now
It
I've
will
gotten
be
it passed
Kamala.
that if you
Nah,
are
it's
get
gonna
a
be
stay away order
Klobuchar.
from a
Trust
court,
me.
you have a child with someone,
There's a
Alright.
Twitter
you cannot
conspiracy
own a
about
gun.
it.
No one should
Alex
be able to own a
Leffler
gun
with his
who has
inside
abused a
governmental
woman, period.
sources.
There's a
Mr.
Twitter
Vice President,
account called
if I could just
@Biden
follow up. Just to
Klobuchar
be
with
clear,
one
you
tweet
just
that
committed
just
here
says
tonight
test.
that your running mate, if you get the nomination, will be a woman?
Yes.
Okay, let me
Senator
ask-
Sanders, will you
right
make
now,
that
may,
same
may I
commitment?
just respond and,
Please.
and ask Joe a question? Right now, a woman's right to control her own body is under massive assault, unprecedented assault.
It is.
Joe, you have in the past, on more than one occasion, voted for the Hyde Amendment, which says that a woman, low-income woman, could not use Medicaid funding for an abortion.
Just eat that pizza
Is
off
that
your
still
arm.
your view, or have you modified
It is not my view. It's not my
Okay.
view. And by the way, everybody who's been in
Sorry,
the Congress
off-camera
voted for the
act.
Hyde Amendment at one point or another because it was locked in other bills. The reason why I
Guys don't
affirmatively
want
came out
pizza now.
opposed to the Hyde Amendment was that if we're going to have public funding
welcome to
for
come over.
all health care along the line, there is no way you could allow for there to be a requirement
We
that
do. We've
you
got a
have
lot of
Hyde
wine.
Amendment,
Almost
a
out of
woman
beer,
who
though.
doesn't have the money could not have coverage under health care.
Well, I'm glad.
Number two, and I've done that. I did that a while ago. Okay. Number
You're
one.
all
Number
welcome
two,
at
I
our
would send
abode.
immediately to the desk of the United States Congress when I'm elected president, if I'm elected president, a codification of Roe v. Wade amended by Casey. Because I think it is a woman's right to choose. I think it's a woman's opportunity to be able to make that decision. And in fact, I've gotten
Justin
100%
Nate go home?
rating from NARAL as well.
Senator Sanders, before we move on, I just want to get you
Excuse
to
me,
respond.
you have a
Well,
lifetime
Jess
100%
graduated
voting
in
record from
December.
NARAL?
I know my record of late from NARAL has been 100%. I don't know whether it was 25 years
Nate
ago.
left at like
Well,
3
all right.
p.m.
I mean, I
on
think one of the
Wednesday.
differences, not to pick a bone here, is I have been consistent.
He was outie.
All right, I've always believed in that, and you have not. I'm glad you have changed your views.
Senator, just to be clear,
But Jess
Vice
has an
President
apartment
committed to picking a
in
woman
Holland,
as his running mate. If you get the
and
nomination,
like
will
he
you?
was gonna move there in
In
May
all likelihood,
anyways.
I will.
So it was
For
pretty
me,
much like
it's not just
I'm gonna go start my life,
nominating
which is pretty fucking wild
a woman.
in my
It
opinion.
is making sure that we have a progressive women, and there are progressive women out there. So
Right,
my
like
very
drop of
strong
a hat.
tendency
I'm gonna
is
go
to move in that
have my
direction.
big boy
Let's
job
turn
and
now to immigration.
settle
Vice
down
President
for the rest of
Biden,
my life,
you recently said
which is
for the first
horrifying.
time
Makes me want
that
to
the
die.
Obama-Biden administration made
That's
a big
the only
mistake
appropriate
in
response, Nicole.
deporting millions of immigrants, but you didn't publicly speak out against it at the time.
Right.
What commitment will you make tonight that as president
Get married,
you
have
won't
like 4
deport
kids, and then
millions
do
again?
their deal.
Number one, I said that it took much
Again,
too long to get
terrifying.
it right. And the president did get it right by DACA, as well as making sure that he tried to protect parents as well. And by the way, moving on an immigration bill as well. The fact is that we already had a vote on an immigration bill, by the way, and Bernie voted against it. The immigration bill.
She's a nurse. He's an engineer.
We have 6 million undocumented will be citizens.
He's going to work for an auto company.
But I will send to the desk immediately a bill that requires access to citizenship for 11 million undocumented.
Here we are,
Number
drunk,
two, in the first 100
stress eating
days of my
pizza,
administration,
dyeing hair
no
purple,
one
and
will
on
be deported
Alex's
at all.
Twitch
From that point
stream
on, the only deportations that will take
on
place
a Sunday
are
night, while
commissions
other
or
people
felonies
exactly
in the
our
United
age in our
States of
position.
America.
So to be clear, only felons get deported and everyone else has to stay.
Charlie, last night
Yes,
I
and the reason is
almost
it's about uniting
painkiller
families. It's about
headache
making
bought
sure
a
that we can both
humidifier
be a
for my
nation of
room.
immigrants as well as a nation that is decent.
Are you trying to say that you're becoming an adult?
Wow, Nicole, you need to calm down being so wild.
2007 immigration
So
bill.
it's my Saturday night.
That bill was
Crazy.
opposed by LULAC, the largest Latino organization in America. The Southern Poverty Law Center called its
Keep
guest
your
worker
pinky up,
programs
drinking out
akin
of your
to
cup from the
slavery.
riv.
There wasn't really a vote on the bill. It was killed because there was
Shakespeare's
a vote
Pizza.
on the dog amendment. I think it was 49-48. And you know who voted with me
Columbia,
on that one, Joe?
Missouri.
Barack
Wow.
Obama. He understood.
Did you get that at your
that
nerd camp?
proposal was a bad
No, my brothers
idea. We
both
don't
went to
need,
Mizzou. We've had this
slavery
cup
in
is
America where
probably
guest workers
at least 10
are
years
forced
old.
to stay with their employers.
Proud.
But in terms of immigration in general, let me outline some of the things that we do. Day one, we restore the legal status of 1.8 million young people and their parents in the DACA program. Number two, immediately, we end these ICE raids, which are terrorizing communities all over this country. Three, we change the border policy under my administration. No federal agent will ever grab little babies from the arms of their mothers. And fourth, I think we can pass what the American people want, and that is comprehensive immigration reform, path towards citizenship for the 11 million undocumented.
Senator Sanders, critics suggest positions like this send a message that when a Democrat is in the White House, the border is open. Do they?
No, that's just, I mean, that's what Trump says, and that is a total lie. What we're talking about is a humane, sensible policy supported by the American people. Nobody is talking about open borders, and of course, Trump lies about that. But the bottom line is, right now, you have in this country people who have been here for decades. They're working hard. They're raising their kids. They're an important part of our agricultural economy, our construction economy. These are good people, and yet they're living in terror. And we have got to
We really
end
do
that
all have our
terror,
vices.
end the ICE raids, and move toward a path towards citizenship.
Let me set the record straight on something you said. You know, the idea that it was slavery.
If I didn't have nothing else to say
Barack
besides
Obama
no.
supported that bill, that immigration bill. Teddy Kennedy supported that immigration bill. I supported it. I doubt whether those people think it's slavery.
Well,
and by the way, right after his vote against that, he went on the Lou Dobbs show and continued to canard that they're taking jobs. These immigrants are taking jobs from Americans, which is one of the Republican canards, right after that vote, that no vote. And so, come on. You think Ted Kennedy is for slavery? You think I was for slavery? You think people voted for it for slavery? And with regard to your issue, your question relative to whether or not I would deal with supporting the border. Look, we can deal with securing the border by national technical means. All the bad things are coming through ports of entry right now. We don't need a wall. And by the way, I would immediately, as president, surge to the border. I would end this notion for the first time in history that people seeking asylum have to be in squalor on the other side of the river,
Hey, he's talking about your people,
they
Nicole.
Should be able to come to the United States and have a judgment made as whether or not they qualify. I would also surge to the border immigration judges to make decisions.
My friend just texted me. I heard the government might be announcing a stage 1 lockdown tomorrow, so make sure you've got the necessities.
The entire campaign.
What the fuck is a stage 1 lockdown?
Also, the Trump administration would never.
Hundreds of administrative judges. We need to deal with people who are seeking asylum based on international law. We need not to be dividing children from their parents and dividing families up. We need a humane border policy. And I'll tell you what else we need.
I'd like for all of you to enjoy this meme. Can you read it?
My father came to this country from Poland at the age of 17, without a nickel in his pocket, couldn't speak English, didn't have much of an education. I will end on day one demonization, ugly demonization from the White House of the
It was the guy getting beat up that said us, and then 2020 was the one beating him up, and the coronavirus is out there cheering on, and like Kobe Bryant was out there cheering on, and it reached third guy.
Native American.
That's my description of
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
Thanks,
Vice
Nicole.
President Biden,
I appreciate it.
You opposed sanctuary cities as a presidential candidate in 2007. Where do you stand now? Should undocumented immigrants arrested by local police be turned over to immigration officials?
No.
That's it.
Senator Sanders?
Of course not. Look, and one
Are
of
you
the
okay?
things that goes on when you have that
You just
process
said no.
is that not only the psychological terror, and I've talked to these kids. Kids are scared to death in America when they come home from school that their mom or dad may not be there, may be deported. What we need to do is to end, and I will end this on day one, the ICE raids that have been so harmful to so many people. And we need to do, again, what the American people want us to do. I'm the son
We've
of an
proven
immigrant.
time and time again that we don't love our kids.
Significantly built by immigrant labor, built by slave labor. And what we have got to do is appreciate each other and end this demonization and divisiveness coming from the Trump administration.
Senator
Sanders,
go ahead. Look, we are a nation of immigrants. Our future rests upon the Latino community being fully integrated. 24 out of every 100 children in school today, from kindergarten through high school, is a Latino. Right now, today. The idea that any American thinks it doesn't pay for us to significantly invest in their future is absolutely a bizarre notion, because if we do not invest, everything that the very wealthy are concerned about and the xenophobes are concerned about will in fact get worse, not better. We should be embracing, bringing them in, just like what happened with the Irish immigrants after the famine, just what happened to the Italians, etc. We've been through this before. Xenophobia is a disease.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Let's move now to the climate crisis. I'm coming right to you, Senator Sanders. The World Health Organization calls the climate crisis a, quote, health crisis, and warns that climate change could fuel the spread of infectious diseases. Can you point to specific measures in your climate plan that address that threat?
Well, of course we do. I mean, we look, this is what the scientists are telling us, the same scientists who make your point there, Jake. What they're telling us is if we don't get our act together in the next 7 or 8 years, there will be irreversible damage done to this planet. We're talking about cities in America, from Miami to New Orleans to Charleston, South Carolina, being underwater. We are talking about severe droughts, which will prevent farmers in the Midwest from growing the food that we need. We're talking about extreme weather disturbances, which hit Houston, Texas, Venice, Italy, just a few months ago. We are talking about the absolute need, and I want to hear Joe's position on this. This is not a middle-of-the-ground thing. This is not building a few more solar panels or a few more wind turbines. What this is about is transforming our energy system as quickly as we humanly can away from fossil fuel. It is insane that we continue to have fracking in America. It is absurd that we give tens of billions of dollars a year in tax breaks and subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. This has got to end, and end now, if we love our kids and future generations.
Vice President Biden?
I think I'm behind you guys.
President Obama and I were summoned to the
just
What do you mean?
State Department, the Defense Department for was to meet with all the chiefs.
Well, you're very behind.
The single greatest threat to our national security. They
seen
said
Biden swing on Bernie yet?
Single greatest threat to our national.
Yeah, I found out that Bernie was pro-union. He just started swinging.
All well and good, but nowhere near enough. I mean, you mentioned we started
we're
this
deep
debate
into
talking
Amazon
about
fires.
a warlike situation.
I've just said you appreciate a good
and we said we have to act accordingly.
payment for ecosystem services
we have to act
approach
dramatically
from a federal level, although I'm not quite sure where $20 billion to do that's going to come from.
I look at climate change in exactly the same
Charlie,
way.
as we've already established, if we can pull 1.5 trillion out of thin air, we can find
it. The deal right now is, do we have
the Fed doing rate cuts is different than an appropriation.
Do we take on
Bite
the healthcare
me.
industry
cut
and tell
Fed?
them their
Give it
problems are
all
not more important than healthcare?
to social programs.
Do we take
Abolish
on
the Fed.
fossil fuel industry? Look,
Delete
in
it.
terms of the fossil
Fine.
Control
fuel
Alt
industry,
Delete.
these guys have been
Do
lying.
it.
They've been lying for years,
Fed.
like the tobacco industry lied 50 years ago.
It is not an appropriation, though.
If fossil fuels,
20 billion is still kind of chump change in the grand scheme
they knew
of how many hundreds of billions we have letting the military play around with planes that are never going to be used.
Is an issue of
Hey,
enormous consequence.
those 20
What Joe
billion
was saying
feed my
goes
dad's
nowhere
salary.
near enough. It's not a
Paying
question
for
of
me to
money.
be at college.
Give me a minute here. We have time to talk about
Like the military's 20 billion?
world shaking event.
I
Any of the
understand. I just
military's
wanna
20
give him a chance
billion
to
that they
respond.
pay
Okay,
out
fine.
to
Let's
Boeing
stay on-
for
we're
fighter
staying on
jets
this
that they
issue.
don't use.
Number one, no more
Okay,
subsidies
well,
for fossil fuel industry.
I
No
still
more
don't like
drilling
the
on
jets.
federal lands.
Sorry.
No more drilling, including offshore.
No, I haven't liked
ability for the
don't like
oil
the
industry to
hedges was on the
continue to
team.
drill. Period.
I'm still
Ends.
solidly
Number one.
anti.
Number two, we're in a situation as well where we cannot,
It's just
we are able to
Andrew
move
Rocket is
rapidly
against me going
to
to school.
change the dynamic in terms of
I don't know,
what
I
we
feel like
can
that's
do to
silly.
set
I mean,
in
I
motion.
also support.
The fact that he says
I'm also
climate
into
change,
tuition-free college,
Paris
so I'm
Accord
actually
doesn't mean
pro
much.
you going.
We should get everything exactly right.
Still,
We're 15% of the problem. 85%
Joe's doing the
of the
lean
problem is
in.
over there.
Do you feel
We
more
need someone who
connected
can
to him
deal
now?
internationally. We need someone who can bring the world together
Got his
again.
little pen
We need
going.
someone who can move in the direction that, in fact, if you violate the commitment you make, you will pay an economic price for it, like what's happening in China. They're exporting coal, significant coal.
Thank you. Look, obviously, the Paris
Wait,
Accord
Nicole, I
is
think we're
useful,
talking about
but
foreign
it doesn't
policy
go
right now.
anywhere. If you laugh at Joe, then you're missing the point.
You're
This
Paying
is
Climate
Brazil
change
is
is
not
foreign
currently
policy.
not foreign
You
policy.
talk about, I'm talking about stopping fracking as soon
Being
as we
impish.
possibly can. I'm
Also,
talking about
Bernie's
telling
talking
the
about
fossil
stopping the
fuel
fracking.
industry
You know what? Saudi
that they
Arabia
are
has
gonna
already been
stop
making moves to
destroying
stop the
this
fracking.
planet. No ifs, buts, and maybes about
Trying
it.
Yes,
to
you
order
could.
American
Maybe you would
fracking
just
out of
stop.
business.
Well, I'm not sure
That
your
should be
proposal
wild.
does that. I'm talking about speaking to China, to Russia, to countries all over the world. And
I love that
in
they're just
this
fully
moment,
turned towards each other now.
making the point that instead of spending 1.8 trillion on weapons of destruction
We all
designed to
knew it
kill
would
each
end
other,
up with these
maybe
two
we
at
should
each other's
pool our
throats.
resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. I know your heart is in the right place, but this requires dramatic, bold action. We've got to take on the fossil fuel industry. Your plan does not do that.
My plan takes on the fossil fuel industry and it unites the world. He just got finished saying. What's he going to do? He's going to bring these countries together, make it clear to them. I'm saying we bring them together, make them live up to the commitments. If they don't live up to the commitments, they pay a financial price for it. They pay an economic price for it because we can do everything. My state is 3 feet above sea level. I don't need a lecture on what's going to happen about rising seas. I know what happens. I watched the whole Delmarva Peninsula, just like it is in South Carolina and the rest. Something I know a little bit about. I wrote the first climate change bill that was in the
Bernie
Congress
speaking in
with
third
political
person?
access, was a game changer. I'm the guy who came along and said with Dick Lugar that we're going to trade, we'll forgive your debt if you don't cut down your forest. I've been way ahead of this curve. This idea that all of a sudden Bernie found this out is amazing to me.
Senator Sanders?
Now, Bernie didn't find it out. Bernie is listening to the scientists. And what, you're talking about making countries around the world fulfill their commitments. Those commitments are not enough. What this moment is about, Joe, is that the scientists are telling us they underestimated the severity of the crisis. They were wrong. The problem is more severe. So all that I'm saying right here is that we are fighting for the future of this planet, for the well-being of our
Update
kids
on
and
the
future generations.
stage 1
You cannot
lockdown
continue,
tomorrow
as
is
I
that she heard
understand
it from a
Joe
friend
believes,
of a
to
friend's
continue
cousin who's
fracking.
working on the
Correct me if
pandemic
I'm wrong.
team in
What
the
we need to
government.
do right now
The
is bring the
government?
world together, tell the fossil fuel industry
The
that we are
government?
gonna move
Believe you
aggressively
can still go to the
wind,
store if
solar,
necessary, but only a
sustainable
certain amount of
energies,
people,
and
which
energy
should be a certain
efficiency.
number of people, because people are
No new
numerable.
fracking. And
In
by
the
the
store,
way,
it limits on
in
how
the
many
Recovery
things
Act,
you can
I was
buy.
able to make sure we invested
Well, I'm
$90
not
billion
stockpiling toilet paper,
in
gal.
making sure we brought down the price of solar and wind that is lower than the price of coal. That's why not another new coal plant will be built.
You don't
I
have
did that when you were watching.
575
Number
rolls
one.
of toilet
Number
paper
two,
like Brett and I
we're in
do
a
stashed
situation
in our
where
roommate's room?
we, in fact, have the ability to
You,
lay
like,
down the tracks where
Actually,
no one
we're
can
out of
change
toilet
the,
paper when this
change
toilet
the
paper
dynamic.
craze was
And
going.
that's
So,
why
like, we
we
felt
should be
kind of
talking
douchey
about
going to the
things
store
like
to
I've
buy
been talking
toilet
about
paper,
for
but
years.
like,
High-speed
we
rail,
had none
taking
left.
millions of automobiles off
I
the
feel
road,
like it's really just
making
a
sure that
flaw
we
in the
move in a
supply
direction
chain of
where
toilet paper.
no more drilling
But,
on our land.
I didn't
making
hear
sure that
about
we
any of this whole
invest in
toilet paper thing until
changing
after
the
I got back
entire
from my
fleet of the
weekly
United
round of
States
TPing my
military
landlord's
to-
house.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Vice President.
really
Senator,
just,
I want
I
to
had
talk
some
to you
egg on
about
my
fracking.
face after that one.
Because
I
you
went
want
to
to ban
Kroger,
fracking,
no toilet paper.
which is a
in
method
sight.
of extracting
I
natural
had put
gas.
some 50 rolls
The
on
shift
the
towards
guy's house. Just
natural gas and away
wasteful.
from
I felt-
coal has
Did you go take
resulted
us back
in
from the
reduced U.S.
trees?
carbon emissions. So
No, they were
how
too
can
high.
the
I
U.S.
couldn't reach. It was
transition
much
to your
higher than
targeted
like the
goal of
fridge
zero
where
emissions
stuff gets put
with
on.
fracking
That's already,
completely out of the picture?
Because we have to
you know, like
invest in an
this was well out of reach. I would have
way.
needed a ladder,
In
like
an
the ability to jump.
unprecedented, you started off by saying that we're talking about a 13,
It used
14
to be
trillion
part of
dollar
our
investment. That is a lot
spirit
of money.
week in high
And I've
school
been
that the
criticized for that.
juniors would TP the
But I
seniors'
don't know
houses
what
and
the
the seniors
alternative
would
is
TP the
if we are
juniors'
playing
houses.
for the future of
And there
this
was one
planet. So
time
we got to be
that a
dramatic.
number of the
And what
seniors
being
that we
dramatic
TP'd
is
when we were
massive
juniors
investment
picked up
in
all of
wind,
their toilet
in
paper and
solar,
took it and TP'd the school
under
with
the
it.
in sustainable
And then
energies
those
in
guys got
general,
trouble.
research and development,
Got
in
'em.
We didn't.
making
We only
our
got stopped by
buildings
the cops
all over
once.
this country, my state of Vermont, and around this country,
That's
got a
what
lot of
matters.
old buildings. We can put millions and millions of people to work, making our buildings energy efficient, moving our transportation system to electricity.
What
So
transportation
what we're
system?
talking
I was
about
unaware that we
is
had
a
them in this
massive,
country.
unprecedented investment. That is what the Green New Deal is about. I supported
The
it,
occasional plane.
and I will fight to implement it.
Thank you so much, Senator
That
Sanders.
one
We're going to
bus
be back
that
with more from the
services
CNN
maybe a
Univision
tenth of the
Democratic presidential
community.
debate. Stay with us.
Literally the one bus that goes from campus to the Capitol. The one public transit option in the state of Michigan.
It also goes to the Meridian Mall. I took it to get my laptop fixed at Best Buy.
Somehow that does not surprise me at all. Little freshman Nicole on the one bus.
No, this was last month, Charlie.
All right, little senior Nicole going to get her laptop
Joke's
fixed.
on you if you think I'll ever have a car up here.
Do they even have cars in Missouri yet?
Yes, actually, my family, as a whole unit, now owns 6 cars for the 6 drivers that we have in the fam unit, which is like it's a good 1-to-1 ratio now. However, one of those cars is obviously not Michigan, so one person has 2 in Missouri, because that makes sense.
So the Danger Rangers in Missouri.
Don't call it a Danger Ranger. Our truck is in perfect functioning order. It just squeaks sometimes. Built Ford strong.
Recipe
I
Stan.
don't actually know how to drive.
Right, Shay?
Oh, because you
Aren't
missed
you
out.
learning?
I'm learning.
Do you have a license? Like, are you just saying you're not a good driver, or
I don't have a
You-
license. I never did driver's training. I don't know how.
because I can tell you that
Well,
is
you
not
should.
that doesn't preclude you from having a license.
Hey, Jasmine, when was the last time you drove anyway?
I have never driven because I don't have a license or a permit. That would be illegal, Alex.
Yeah.
I won't say anything. I'm sorry.
Ain't nobody about to catch me.
Yeah, this Twitch stream is just an elaborate sting to catch illegal drivers.
Knew it.
Yeah,
Alex
like
is a cop.
Just an elaborate scheme to catch us drinking and swearing. And by us, I mean me drinking and swearing about the presidential election.
Yeah, good thing there's no drinking on this stream.
Absolutely no drinking.
That would have been horrible.
What is an alcohol?
Yeah,
Who do
right?
you think we are?
Yeah. You're
I am
scholars.
hydrating.
I'm also hydrating.
I'm out.
You should go refill. It's commercial break, Alex.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. See ya.
All right, now that Alex is gone.
Hey Shay, how's your back from when we got in that car accident?
Relatively normal.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
How's your truck?
Total.
Still totaled?
Still totaled.
Still totaled? That's real great, Charlie.
Rest in peace, Stan.
I'm so sorry.
What do you say you named it?
What?
What do you say you named it? What did you say you named that truck?
Stan.
That's not a name for a truck.
What's a good name for a truck, Andrew?
Literally, like Stan is like just go process of elimination, cross off Stan, and just start going through other names. You're like bound to hit one.
That's just quite rude.
Sorry, bro.
I just feel bad that we worried Jen so much.
You can't be naming trucks Stan.
Honestly, Alan picking me up was the peak of my young life.
I'm so mad that we graduated before we got to meet Meatball.
Do you still want the camera not on you?
Oh, Meatball is so great. Meatball is amazing. Meatball is cute. She's adorable.
Meatball is so cute, and we never got to meet it, and that's breaking my heart.
Meatball's kind of a little shit, though.
Well, so are you, but we let you in here.
It's a little evil.
I don't know, but I haven't bitten anybody's hand lately.
He was biting my toes.
Yeah, hold on. I remember.
Meatball was gnawing on my toes. I was wearing fuzzy socks. He was trying to put a hole in them.
I love that. That's adorable.
That's what Shay did last time she saw you.
Shay, you missed it. Pay attention for a sec. My mom sent me a Munchie picture today.
Munchie!
There you go.
I'm ready.
Pull it up. Give me 5 seconds. Ah, I'm under pressure.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun. Oh my god.
Munchie.
Tell him he's doing a great job. My god, it's like he doesn't have any features. He's just like a blob of white with
Let's
eyes.
move now
and a
to
nose.
foreign policy. Senator Sanders.
I love him so much.
There are
I would
about
die for him.
1.5 million Cuban Americans
Yeah,
living in
Cuban.
Florida right now.
He's so
Why
cute.
would they vote for you when they hear you praise a
I love
program
him.
of Fidel Castro, a dictator who jailed,
He loves you
tortured,
too.
and
Look at that eye
killed
contact.
thousands of Cubans?
Oh my god. Wow, I feel
have
validated.
opposed authoritarianism, whether it's in Cuba,
Gorilla.
whether it's in Saudi Arabia, whether it's in China, or whether it is in Russia. That is my life record. I believe, unlike the President of the
Is
United
him
States,
driving the truck?
in democracy, not authoritarianism in Cuba
That is a
or
cute
any place
dog.
else.
Thank you.
What I believe right now in this world is that we are faced with a global crisis
Wait, you didn't meet him
and a
when we all took
movement
our
Here's
towards
him with
Missouri
some
authoritarianism. That's what
booties.
Putin in Russia
Oh
is
my
leading.
god.
That's what
Did you just
MBS
put
in
balloons
Saudi
over his
Arabia
little feet?
is leading. And as President
They
of the United
actually
States,
are
unlike Donald
booties,
Trump, I
but
would put
yes,
the
they are
flag
rubber
down
balloons.
and say that in this country
We
and
got my
in this
Boston
world,
Terrier leg
we have got to
warmers,
move
but she bites
toward
us when we try to
democracy
put him on
and
her.
human rights.
He's
That
him
is
being
my
safe
view
during
and
the
has
solar
always been
eclipse.
my view.
To be
Oh
clear,
my
Senator
god.
Sanders,
Is he
Safer
safe
than
during the
Cuba has been a
coronavirus?
dictatorship for decades.
Yes, dogs
Shouldn't
cannot
we
get it.
judge dictators
Well,
by
make
the
sure you're keeping him
violation
extra
of
safe.
human
Here's his
rights and
headshot
not
bottle
by any
pick.
of their alleged achievements?
Well, I think you can make the same
but
point about
especially
China.
for him.
China is undoubtedly an authoritarian society,
So cute.
okay? But would anybody deny, any economist deny, that extreme
I
poverty
really
in
appreciate
China
how
today
President
is much
Stanley
less than
sent
what it
all
was
of you
40 or 50
guys,
years
and
ago?
I'm
That's
not
a fact.
angry. I'm just
So
disappointed.
I think
email.
we condemn
I
authoritarianism.
also love how he
whether
said
it's
I'm
in China, Russia,
postponing, not
Cuba,
canceling graduation.
any place else.
But
But
that's
to
because he's
simply say
threatening
that
you. He's like,
nothing
stop going to
ever done by
Harper's, you
any
morons.
of those administrations had a positive
And
impact
maybe
on
I'll
their
give you your
people
graduation
would I think
back.
be incorrect.
Vice President Biden, you have criticized Senator Sanders for praising Castro's education system. But in 2016, President Obama said Cuba made,
I'll
quote,
die for
a
him.
great progress in educating young people and that its healthcare system is a huge achievement that they should be congratulated
Did
for.
y'all see today
How
that
is that
the
different
Florida
from
state
what Senator
legislature
Sanders
voted
has said?
He was trying to change Cuban policy so the
to
Cuban people
name
would get out
Florida
from under
State
thumb
the
of Castro
unofficial
and his brother.
official
That is to change the
NCAA
policy
basketball
so that we can
champions.
I did see that.
impact
I don't think they're
Cuba's
recognized
policy
as a
by
selector.
getting them opened
Florida
up.
is
That
freaking
was
wild. They
about
tried to pull
But
that
the
crap with
praising of the
UCF too.
Sandinistas, the
Whenever they
praising
weren't
of
allowed into the
Cuba,
college
the
football
praising
playoffs.
just
Like
now
those
of China.
3 years
China
ago.
is an
Yeah,
authoritarian dictatorship.
UCF
That's what
actually
it is.
like
We have to
because
deal
there's
with them
like
because they're there.
50
But the
random
idea that they,
computer
in fact, have
matrices
increased
that choose
the
champions
wealth
that
of
the
people in
NCAA
that country,
recognizes as
it's been
official.
marginal, the
And for
changes
some
taken
reason,
place.
one of
It is
them
still, they
thought
have a
UCF
million
was better
Uyghurs,
than
a
Alabama
million
and put
Muslims
them number
in
one
prison
one of their
camps in the
years.
West.
So
You see what's
UCF is like
happening in Hong
officially
Kong
recognized
today.
as a national
And by
champion
the
for
way,
2017
the idea that
because
he
of some
praised the
weird
Soviet
like
Union when it was the
old
Soviet Union
by
about
rules
the
that
things
have
that
not
they
been
had done
updated.
well. They're an awful
And
dictatorship.
what's
killing
funny about that
millions and
is
millions
that
of
like
people.
it's like
And in
not
addition
doing
to
that like
that,
every
we
year.
have a
Like this is one of the
circumstance
only
where
times it's like
after
ever done that
the
and
election
spit
was
out a
all
random
over and we
champion
knew
who didn't like win the BCS or
was
playoff
done
or whatever.
by the Russians now in interfering with
And
our
I
elections,
love it.
this man voted against sanctioning Russia for interference in our elections.
Senator
I don't
Sanders?
get it.
Well, what you don't get, and this is exactly what the problem with politics is about.
Oh,
All right,
foreign policy. Unmute.
Did China make progress in ending
I
extreme
tuned back
poverty over the last
into
50
Jack
years?
the Ripper.
Yes or no?
That's like saying Jack the Ripper.
No, it's not.
Right.
Joe.
Yes,
you see,
it
Joe,
is.
this is the problem.
Yes, it is.
This is the problem. We can't talk. I know there's a political line. I understand. China's terrible, awful, nothing ever good. Russia, blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is, China, of course, is an authoritarian society. It's what I just said.
It's a dictatorship.
That's what I just said 5 minutes ago, you know? And by the way, you know, the question that was asked quoted Barack Obama. President Obama was more generous in his praise of what Cuba did in healthcare and education than I was. I was talking about a program 60 years ago in the first year of the Castro revolution. So the bottom line is that I think it's a little bit absurd if we're going to look at the world the way it is. Of course, we are opposed to authoritarian. And by the way, you know, before it was considered good policy, good idea. I was condemning the dictatorship in Saudi Arabia when a lot of other people in Washington were me. I was condemning the dictatorship in the UAE. You were not.
Thank you, Senator
Yes, I
Sanders.
was.
Vice President Biden.
Look, the idea of occasionally saying something nice about a country is one thing. The idea of praising a country that is violating human rights around the world is, in fact, makes our allies wonder what's going on. What do you think the South Koreans think when he praises China like that? What do you think the Australians believe in the shadow of China? What do you think is happening in Indonesia in the shadow of China? What do you think is happening in terms of Japan in the shadow of China? Words matter. These are flat-out dictators, period. And they should be called for it, straight up. We may have to work out, for example, I was able to help negotiate a new START agreement with Russia, not because I like Putin. The guy's a thug.
Mr. Vice President, sticking with foreign policy, you acknowledge that your support and vote for the Iraq War was a mistake. What lessons did you learn from that mistake, and how might those lessons influence your foreign policy decision-making as president?
I learned I can't take the word of a president when, in fact, they assured me that he would not use force. Remember the context. The context was the United Nations Security Council was going to vote to insist that we allow inspectors in to determine whether or not they were, in fact, producing nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. They were not. And what's the first thing that happened when we got elected? President Obama turned to me and said, get those troops out of there. I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq. I admitted 14 years ago was a mistake to have trusted him. And I'm prepared to compare my foreign policy credentials up against my friend here on any day of the week and every day of the week.
Let's start off with the war in Iraq, Joe. I was there too. I was in the House. I understood. And by the way, let's be clear about what that vote was. And you were there at the signing ceremony with Bush. Everybody in the world knew that when you voted for that resolution, you were giving Bush the authority to go to war. And everybody knew that's exactly what he and Cheney wanted to do. Most people who followed that issue closely understood that the Bush administration was lying through its teeth with regard to Saddam having weapons of mass destruction. I understood that. I was on the floor of the House time and time again. But the issue is not just the war in Iraq. That was a long time ago. The issue is the trade agreement. It wasn't so easy for me to lead the effort against disastrous trade agreements. The issue was the bankruptcy bill that you supported. The issue was the Hyde Amendment. The issue is the Defense of Marriage Act. The issue is whether or not in difficult times, and God knows these are difficult times, we're going to have the courage to take on powerful special interests and do what's right for the working families of this country.
Why did you vote not to sanction the Russians?
You know why? Because that had you keep talking about Iran. That was tied to Iran. Russia was in Iran. I think John Kerry indicated his support for what I did. That was undermining the Iranian agreement. That's why.
Not true.
That's why. And that's the only reason why. I have condemned Russia time and time again.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that the idea that I, in fact, supported the things that he's suggesting is not accurate. Look, I'm the guy that helped put together the Iran deal and got the inspectors in there. That was my chief of staff was the guy, my foreign policy guy, doing that negotiation. I was the guy that helped put together a 60-nation organization to take on the ISIS in Iraq and in Syria.
Well,
I've dealt with these folks. I know them, and I know what they're like, and I know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. The fact is, this Bernie's notion about how he embraces folks like the Sandinistas and Cuba and the former Soviet Union and talks about the good things they did in China is absolutely contrary to every message we want to send the rest of the world.
Senator Sanders.
I have led the effort against all forms of authoritarianism, including America's so-called allies in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia, and in fact, as you may know, worked with conservative Republicans to utilize for the very first time the War Powers Act to get the United States out of the horrific war in Yemen led by Saudi Arabia. That's what I did. So my view is that in a world moving toward authoritarianism, the United States has got to be the leader where people all over the world look to us
Thank you, Senator.
for guidance.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to change topics and ask each of you about some of your vulnerabilities in this election, starting with you, Vice President Biden. Senator Sanders has won more of the Hispanic vote than you in several key states so far. In fact, he doubled your support in California among Hispanics. He almost tripled it in Nevada. So why is your message not resonating with Hispanic voters?
Well, look, my message is resonating across the board. Every single state we've been in, there's been a significant turnout. In Virginia, turnout was up 70%. They voted for me. He didn't bring them out. I brought them out. And number two, look what's happened in Mississippi. Look what's happened in North Carolina. Look what's happened in Washington State. Look what's happened across the board.
That's a good question.
Why is it that I'm winning all those places? What's the reason? What's the reason? The reason is because they know I am a Democrat with a capital D who in fact believes that our base is the base of the Democratic Party, which are hardworking men and women who, in fact, are high school educated, African Americans and minorities, including Hispanics, but all minorities, suburban women, people who, in fact, have a sense of our place in the world. That's why I am winning, not just winning, but overwhelmingly winning, not even close in these places.
Senator, Senator Sanders, let me just follow up with you about an issue that you're having. For the second consecutive presidential election, you're struggling to gain wide support from African Americans. Why is your message not resonating with African American voters?
Here is what I believe is happening, and this is an important point, and why I decided to run for president. I think it's imperative that we defeat Trump. I think our campaign of a biracial, bigenerational, multi-generational grassroots movement is the way to do it. Now, we have won some states. Joe has won more states than I have. But here's what we are winning. We are winning the ideological struggle, even in states like Mississippi, where Joe won a major victory. Turns out that a pretty good majority of the folks there believe in Medicare for all. And that's true in almost every state in this country. And the other issue that we don't talk enough about is we are winning the generational struggle. Depending on the state, we're winning people 50 years of age or younger. Big time people 30 years of age and younger. I frankly have my doubts. Look, if I lose this thing, Joe wins, Joe, I will be there for you. But I have my doubts about how you win a general election against Trump, who will be a very, very tough opponent unless you have energy, excitement, the largest voter turnout in history. And to do that, you are going to have to bring young people who are not great voters. They don't vote in the kinds of numbers they should into the political process. You're going to have to bring Latinos, who are great people, who have the agenda that we need, but also don't vote in the numbers that we need. I have my doubts that Vice President Biden's campaign can generate that energy and excitement and that voter turnout.
I will do that. And by the way, just get this straight. The energy and excitement that's taken place so far has been, for me, 70% turnout increase in Virginia. I can go down the list. They're coming out for me, and I didn't even have the money to compete with this man in those states. I virtually had no money. The press kept saying, Biden has no money. And they were right. Biden had no money. And the idea, why are they doing that? The reason they're doing that is because they understand I know what has to happen, that I know what needs to be done. And by the way, the idea that everybody supports Medicare for all, he still hasn't indicated how much it's going to cost people. He's yet to know exactly what's going to. So here's my point. People don't know the detail at all. And the fact is, I am winning overwhelmingly among Democratic constituencies across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN Univision Democratic presidential debate. Stay right there.
No. Sis boom ba. Sis.
Yeah.
What's your take on it, Alex?
Like this last section, the whole thing.
Any of it.
I think it's interesting. I have some specific, I feel, issues that I feel like shouldn't, like don't matter. Biden, Sanders, whatever. One being dehumanization of immigrant populations. Consistently referring to these people as quote unquote undocumented is a problem. I understand that there's not a lot of time in a debate to go into nuance, but the erasure of trans individuals from the reproductive health discussion is problematic. I don't think either one of them are really putting in any arguments that are helping them. It's very much one side being, hey, these are the issues that we've been talking about the whole time, which is very much Bernie's style for the last 60 years. But then Biden's side is just, this isn't viable, which is the popular rhetoric that surrounds socialist policies. I have a stack of notes on other stuff, but it's not particularly coherent.
So it's mostly just missing things that aren't there.
Yeah. It's interesting that they mentioned slave labor and didn't dig into like modern slavery or discuss wage slavery. They didn't refer to what's going on, the attacks that are going on by ICE and against immigrant populations as a genocide. The American people aren't going to be too cool with calling it a genocide, but that's what it is. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff that's missing that I have a problem with. The stuff that's there is more like, splitting hairs.
Well, yeah, it's weird to me. I've skipped a lot of the debates because I just didn't really care enough to hear them complain to each other. But it's really weird, like, how deeply into semantics that we're getting. Like, whenever you only have a couple million people in the nation's attention for 2-3 hours a night, like, don't you think that there are bigger, like, platform things that you would be pushing rather than spending 10 of your minutes arguing over, well, did I co-author this bill? Did you co-author this bill? Like, who voted this? Like, what happened at this exact second? Are you going to spend 10 minutes on that? Or are you going to keep trying to push kind of a more broad platform, which I haven't really seen either of them?
They're petty assholes.
Yes.
Which is odd because I've caught a couple of the other debates. I haven't seen all of them, but usually that is Bernie's the way that he goes. It's just kind of platforming these or fighting for these platforms the whole time, and it is usually Biden's strategy kind of poke holes in the people around them. But they're not that effective. I'm not a debate scientist, whatever you call that, political scientist, whatever. I don't know. Just like maps.
I mean, I think on record, like, it's a one-on-one debate now for the first time. It's the first time we're seeing a one-on-one debate, and like, yeah, so now it's like becoming more adversarial than it was. And the infighting is like a little more obvious than before, but I think there have been shades of that, and I think this is exactly what we're going to see in the general as well. Like, I don't really see this going away. And I don't really know what Bernie's strategy is right now. I don't really believe he thinks he's going to win with how because, like, I don't know, he's very careful in these debates because I think he knows he's going to be campaigning for Biden within a couple of months. And so it does produce like a weird halfway almost, where he's like still trying to highlight some of the bajillion issues with Biden's record,
the economy, who owns
but also not trying to like
the
completely
legislative process.
give
Why do
Trump
we
too
give
much
tax
free
breaks to
material to
billionaires
put in his
and not
ads
raise the minimum wage?
a few months.
Why do we pump up the oil industry while 500,000 people are homeless in America? This is a time to move aggressively, dealing with the coronavirus crisis, to deal with the economic fallout, but it's also a time to rethink America and create a country where we care about each other rather than a nation of greed and corruption, which is what is taking place among the corporate elite.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, what's your closing message tonight for those concerned about, affected by, or dealing with this virus?
Number one, as I said at the outset, I just can't imagine what people are going through right now who have lost someone already. I can't imagine what people are going through when they have a mom. Like, for example, a good friend of ours is sitting outside the window of a nursing home where her mom is because she can't go in, trying to do sign language to her mom and through the window to be able to talk to her. I can't imagine the fear and I guess I can imagine the fear and concern people have. Number one of the things that I think we have to understand is that this is an all hands on deck. This is, as someone said, maybe it was you, Jake, at the outset, this is bigger than any individual. This is bigger than yourself. This is about America. This is about the world. This is about how we bring people together and make the kind of sacrifices we need to make to get this done. And so first and foremost, what we have to do is start to listen to the science again. As I said, what we did, we met, and what I'd be doing today, I'd be sitting down in the Situation Room literally every day like we did at the outset of other crises we had when we were in the White House, and pulling together the best people, and not just the United States, the world, and say, what are the prescriptive moves we have to take now to lessen this virus, to beat it, to go to the point where we can save more lives, get more people tested, get more people the kind of care they need. And then what do we do beyond that to make sure that the economic impact on them is, in fact, rendered harmless? that we, in fact, make sure every paycheck is met, every paycheck that's out there that the people are going to miss, that we keep people in their homes, they don't miss their mortgage payments, they don't miss their rent payments, making sure that they're going to be able to take care of education, and by the way, the education institutions are closing down right now. And so there's so many things we have to do. And in addition to that, what we have to do is we have to have the best science in the world to telling us what can stay open and what need to be closed. Like I said earlier, the idea that we're closing schools, which I understand, but not being able to provide lunches for people who, in fact, need the school lunch program to get by. The idea that we would close any place that I can understand the decision made to close places where 100 or 50 people or more gather. But how do you keep open the drugstore to make sure you can get your prescription? How do you deal with the things that necessarily have to be kept going?
Don't forget, guys, we're still dying.
There should be a national standard for that. It should be coming out of the situation room right now. And by the way, the single most significant thing we can do to deal with the larger problem down the road of income inequality is get rid of Donald Trump. Donald Trump. He's exacerbated every single one of these problems, both the immediate urgent need and how we're going to hold people harmless for the damage done as a consequence of this virus. It's important we do both.
Vice President Biden, Senator Sanders, we want to thank you both for being here tonight under these challenging and trying circumstances. We wish both of you the best. Our thanks as well to our partners at Univision. For Ilya Calderon and Dana Bash, I'm Jake Tapper. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay healthy, stay safe. Our coverage of both tonight's debate and the coronavirus pandemic continues now.
An unwelcome player in this debate.
Jake, thanks very much. There you have it. The CNN Univision Democratic debate. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and a third
I certainly do.
Player, the coronavirus. The candidates acknowledged
I specifically invited it.
I was the one that invited it to MSU. So yeah, that's the debate.
I think it like the last 10 minutes.
It's another shit show.
In the closing statement, I have a particular problem with the viewpoint of Biden mentioned that one of the main issues with addressing like income inequality, which is at the root of a lot of other social issues, was that Trump exacerbated the issues. So getting Trump out is the most important step to addressing this. And not going to doubt that Trump exacerbated these issues, but if the message is we need to go back to what was before and these problems existed before, then that's not really doing anything. That's not fixing any issues. But it's comfortable for an electoral base that, it's the lesser of two evils,
It's not addressing why Trump happened in the first place.
Right. I think that's a lot of personally anyway, why a lot of the delusions of kind of the overall Democrat running right now is a lack of acknowledgement of why that happened. Why did Trump happen? If Trump, these problems that came about with Trump didn't snap into reality on January 20th, 2017.
And I'm not saying you have to think that you're gonna get Trump voters, because I doubt it. But real economic anxiety led to Trump.
Yeah.
Also a whole lot of racism.
I know my home county was one of the Bernie Trump counties. So out of the major candidates in the 2016 primaries, Bernie was by far the one that was voted for the most, but in the general election was overwhelmingly voted for Trump rather than Hillary Clinton. Which I think speaks to that economic anxiety, because there's a lot of rural poverty where I'm from. That's not a widespread kind of example of that, but it's a microcosm, I think, of the issue you're talking about, Jasmine. Andrew, are you just like walking around?
Yeah, I'm looking for something to. I'm arranging some stuff because Shay and I are both going full online tomorrow, and we don't really have workstations set up, so I'm moving some crap around. Getting ready for
yes.
that.
Are you finally cleaning off your desk, Andrew?
What do you I've cleaned out I have cleaned off and remessied my desk like 8 times in the last year.
This
is it right now. Right now it's pretty messy.
Looks a lot like how messy it was last time I was in your apartment.
You know, it was spotless like a day. Like I literally have been moving stuff off of this table where Shay's gonna work onto the desk. And I don't know. The desk is probably going into a different room so that we can like work in peace because we're both gonna be doing like meetings and stuff all the time. I don't know how.
What do you mean different room? There's only one other room.
Well, that would be the room.
Did the arcade ever get set up?
Yes, it did. That is over here.
Beautiful. Look at that.
Isn't it? Cool. Yep, that's Space Invaders.
Who was the highest score?
Me.
Anyone have fun and exciting self-isolation plans?
I'm going to work tomorrow, so.
What?
Not self-isolating.
Is it deemed essential?
It's not. MSU work and my office is still open.
Stay away from Charlie.
Yeah.
Yep.
My work got canceled. It tweeted recently.
Which work, Alex?
Working at the School of Planning, Design, and Construction, GIS analyst.
Are you able to do that remote?
They said I might. I gotta wait for an email. So
hopefully that comes through and keep the paycheck coming.
Yeah. I'll start to have economic anxiety and I'll vote for Trump.
Nicole, did you have a profound statement to make?
No, I was just going to say RIP to my paycheck. I'm very sad still. I haven't fully mourned the loss yet.
It is too bad that they canceled IM Sports.
Don't you know?
We didn't get to play soccer playoffs.
Alex, we're going to lose the first game anyway.
You don't know that.
Yeah,
no,
I don't know. You guys
talk
to the state legislature. Get yourselves anointed before anyone else can take that.
My futsal team is so good this year. We are absolutely going to go back to back IM champions. And now they took that from us.
Sucks.
That's what our soccer team is going to do too.
I need to go break into the office now and steal a champion shirt. Oh, also, if anyone ever wants to play any sports, I still have full access to all of the intramural equipment.
Steal it.
I still have the key codes. My ID swipes.
Not that we would do any of this.
I do it all the time.
Hypothetically.
Some of our, to not be named,
Nicole doesn't have a care in the world.
Intramural. I don't work for them anymore. What are they gonna do? I don't need a job next year. But some of our intramural employees went and played drunk soccer on Monday night or Friday night in the abandoned demonstration hall because their ID swipe in, so they could.
I'm gonna cut off the stream.
It's not illegal for them to be in there.
Yeah, thanks for anybody that tuned in. Thank you for the scholars for giving their thoughts.